Chapter 366. Puk Dash. Several noble artifacts pierced through Karna's body, and blood splattered everywhere. The noble artifacts that were inserted into Karna's body turned into spots of golden light and were retrieved by Gilgamesh into the gate of Babylon. Cough. I see. You hid these noble artifacts in the shadows of other noble artifacts. As expected of the hero king. Karna coughed up blood and said with some shame. Gilgamesh was an archer, after all. If he just threw noble artifacts around, it would be too degrading. Humph. Bastard, this is the price you pay for attacking this king, Gilgamesh said disdainfully. At this moment, a huge dark purple tentacle that looked like an octopus suddenly broke out of the ground. In an instant, Karna was tied up by this huge dark purple tentacle without any resistance and was dragged into the hole in the ground created by the tentacle. Humph. At best, you're just a bastard, Gilgamesh said disdainfully and did not pursue. At this time, Wyrm also arrived. Hyunryong, you're late. You didn't see this king's moment of bravery, but seeing that you rushed over to support this king will not argue with you. Gilgamesh looked at Wyrm and said arrogantly with squinted eyes. In the eyes of others, Gilgamesh was like a breeze, but at this time, Gilgamesh gave Wyrm the feeling of a dog asking for praise from its owner. Yes, so, your majesty, has the enemy left? Wyrm said as he looked at the hole in the ground. Here, this is the hole. A rat-like tentacle took Karna away. Gilgamesh pointed at the hole in the ground and said disdainfully again. Tentacle. Wyrm frowned. He had never heard of an enemy servant that could use tentacles. Thinking of this, Wyrm squatted down and looked at the hole in the ground. There was a trace of mucus on the edge of the hole. At this time, Gadatsi and the others hurriedly ran up the mountain. Gadatsi and Sakura Madu were both held by their respective servants. Olga Marie's servant, Wyrm, had already run up, so Cuchulain was the one holding her. But, let go of me. Olga Marie said to Cuchulain behind her with a red face. The reason Olga Marie became like this was because Cuchulain lifted Olga Marie by her collar. It's really troublesome. Anna and Mashu have their own masters, and the two goddesses over there won't do such a rough job. I'm the only one left, and they won't let me hug them, so I can only do this. With that, Cuchulain loosened his grip and Olga Marie fell to the ground. Of course, she landed on her but first. Damn it. I'll remember you, Cuchulain. Olgamai stood up and rubbed her buttocks, looking at Cuchulain with shame and indignation. On the other hand, Cuchulain looked indifferent. After all, he would return to the martyr's palace once the Holy Grail war was over. There was no point in looking for trouble. Something unexpected has happened, Wyrm said when he saw that the commotion was almost over. Then, everyone looked at Wyrm. Wyrm then told them what had happened. Gilgamesh and Karna fought. Then, a tentacle took away Karna, who didn't resist, leaving a hole covered in mucus. According to the information we have, the enemy doesn't have any servants with the ability to control tentacles. Olga Marie touched her chin and said. No matter if it's Karna or King Arthur, neither of them has such an ability, and the other servants have either left or are on our side. Wyrm analyzed. In other words. Cuchulain frowned. Is there a new servant? Gadatsi was surprised. Tachika is right. Judging from Karna's appearance, the man in the green hat must have summoned another servant. Wyrm said solemnly. Who the hell is that guy? He can summon an unlimited number of servants. What a troublesome enemy. Olga Marie said with a headache. That. Could it be the ability of the guy who pretended to be Professor Reef? Matthew raised his small hand and asked. That's right. The other party can provide 7 servants at once, and he has the purpose of destroying the world. It's very likely that he's not human. Gadatsi said excitedly as if she had discovered a new continent. It's not impossible, but I think it's more likely that the other party summoned another servant. Wyrm didn't deny Gadatsi's theory, but proposed another possibility. Since the other party can provide 7 servants at once, then it's not impossible to summon another 7 or even more. Assassin is right. We have to prepare for the worst. Olga Marie also nodded. By the way, why did you believe the Red Rider and Red Caster so easily? Aren't you afraid that they lied to you? At this time, Olga Marie asked Wuming. It's not that I don't believe you. I just want to know what you were thinking at that time. Aren't you afraid that they lied to you? Olga Marie asked carefully. After all, they were in a situation where they would die if they made a wrong move. If the other party lied to them, they would be finished. At that time, Olga Marie wanted to ask, but because the other party was there, she didn't have the nerve to ask. After all, Olga Marie was a magician, and it was impossible for her not to be suspicious. I don't think Iskandar will lie. Wuming smiled, and then continued to move toward the entrance of the Yuanzhang mountain. Ha! It's that simple. Olga Marie found it hard to believe. Just because they believed that the other party wouldn't lie, they cooperated so easily. I also feel that the king's temperament. I don't think he will lie to us. Matthew thought for a moment and said. Really, do you have a sixth sense? Olga Marie said helplessly. Okay, don't talk nonsense, let's go. Cuculin said, pushing Olga Marie. I know. Let go of me. So, everyone came to the Yuanzhang Mountain's Ludong Temple. There was a large passage behind it that led directly to the inside of the big hollow. With the number of Wuming and the others, it was a bit inappropriate to take the previous small path. The whole Winterwood city turned into a field of fire, but the strange thing was that the temple was intact, and only some of the surrounding edges were broken. Let's go. Wuming said concisely. Just as everyone was about to enter the Ludong temple, Wuming immediately held out his hand and stopped everyone. Both Cuculin and Wuming looked cautious. What's wrong? What happened? Gadotsi asked. Get ready, there's an enemy. Olga Marie gestured and prepared the magic bullets. Bang! Suddenly, the door of the Ludong temple was violently opened. Chapter 367. Bang! The door of Ludong temple was violently opened, but it wasn't an enemy that came out. Instead, it was an octopus-like monster that was as tall as a person with tentacles. In just a few seconds, countless sea monsters filled the Willow Cave Temple. They kept pouring out of the Willow Cave Temple's entrance and rushed towards Wuming and the others. Wah! What? What is this? It's disgusting. Gadotsi was shocked. There was no need to look closely. These monsters were covered in mucus, and the ground they passed through was wet. Olga Marie didn't say anything, but her legs were trembling. Sakura Madhu shrank into Anna's arms in fear. Matthew was also afraid, but he still held on. He immediately raised his shield and stood in front of Gadotsi and Olga Marie. Only Gorgon's sister, Stheno, and the others weren't afraid of these things. These things look like sea monsters. Stheno looked at the tentacle monsters that were advancing and frowned in disgust. Although she wasn't afraid, she still felt disgust. Even the goddess hated these things. These things aren't worth this king's time. I'll leave them to you. With that, Gilgamesh's spiritual form disappeared. It seemed that she also hated these tentacles. Sure enough, these tentacles have a special attack on women. Wuming thought. Leave it to me. Anna said and handed Sakura Madhu to her sister. Then, she rushed into the sea monsters with her scythe. No one objected. After all, Anna's scythe was more effective against these things that could infinitely regenerate as long as they had magic. The immortal slaughtering blade, Harp, this was the divine sword that had killed the demon Medusa. It could restrain some undying creatures and cause irrecoverable wounds to the opponent. For some inexplicable reason, this sword turned into a scythe and became Anna's weapon when she descended as a lancer. Swish! 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 Just a casual slash was enough to kill a large number of sea monsters in front of him. The power of the undying slaughter blade, harp, completely killed these sea monsters that should have been able to regenerate. However, it was a little difficult for Anna to deal with the sea monsters that were still pouring out continuously by herself. Boom! A violent explosion came from beside Anna. The sea monster in front of Anna was blown to pieces. Anna turned around and looked behind her. Cuchulainn raised his staff, which was smoking like a gun shaft that had just been fired. Blow them to smithereens. I don't believe they can recover. Cuchulainn grinned. However, Anna was a little dissatisfied. Cleaning up these sea monsters was her mission. The enemy should have discovered us. Let's finish them off and leave as soon as possible. Wyrm tried to persuade Anna. Then, Anna nodded with a frown on her face, but she still looked unhappy. Then I won't hold back. Cuchulainn said, laughing wantonly. The loon rune in his hand kept drawing. Countless flames shot at the sea monsters, setting off a series of explosions. Boom! 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 This series of explosions had killed almost 1/3 of the sea monsters. At this time, a few rune stones fell into the center of the remaining sea monsters, producing golden flames. Boom! Boom! Then, Cuchulainn looked at Wyrm. The two of you should hurry up. Wyrm smiled, then threw the loon rune stone in his hand at the sea monsters again. Ah! Are we going to compete? I won't lose. Cuchulainn said excitedly, attacking the sea monsters frantically. In less than 5 minutes, the sea monsters that covered the sky disappeared, leaving behind a faint layer of black dust and traces of various elements. Ice, water, fire, wind, thunder, electricity, earth. Traces of almost all elements could be seen. This made Gadotsi and the others dumbfounded. Especially Olga Marie. That's a rune stone. How could an assassin have so many rune stones? Olga Marie complained crazily. Secrets that could not be known were fatal to Olga Marie. An assassin, where the hell did you get those rune stones from? Why do you have so many types of rune stones? Roman also complained. It's just my ability. Those rune stones were just made when I was bored. Wyrm shrugged. However, Assassin's damage output is really amazing. Matthew wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. After all, Matthew and the others had been watching from the side. Wyrm's damage output was almost higher than Cuchulainn's. Cuchulainn's attack was just a simple red burst of flames, while their loon rune stones were all kinds of elements, so it was easy to distinguish. The reason why Matthew said this was because of the difference in their ranks. Cuchulainn was a caster, so it was normal for him to have AoE damage. After all, he was a mage cannon. However, Wyrm was not a caster, but an assassin. As an assassin, he was even more AoE than a caster. It was simply outrageous. I've handed over almost all the offensive runestones I've made in the past. It's normal for them to have such an effect, Wyrm said with a smile. He opened a part of the dragonist's space in the center of his palm and threw out a large number of loon rune stones from his noble phantasm. Because they were in a hurry, Wyrm bombarded the sea monsters indiscriminately at a speed that even Mashu couldn't see clearly. Together with Cuchulainn, the two of them were able to destroy all the sea monsters that could affect the entire Fuyuki city in 5 minutes. There was another reason why Wyrm used up all the loon rune stones. After all, they can be made in the future, can't they? These rune stones were made to deal with situations similar to this. Wyrm smiled. At this time, Gilgamesh lifted his spirit form. As far as actors are concerned, these pieces of trash are not qualified at all, but they let me see a good show. Gilgamesh looked at the debris on the ground and said sarcastically. If you could help me, it would be much easier. Wyrm shrugged his shoulders. Humph. This king said that these things are not worthy of this king's help. Gilgamesh glared at Wyrm fiercely. Yes, then let's go, the enemy is waiting for us, we can't lose the limelight. After dealing with Gilgamesh, Wyrm said to everyone. It seems that you are getting bolder and bolder, Hyunryong. Looking at Wuming and others who had walked away, Gilgamesh, who fell behind the crowd, said angrily. But then Gilgamesh's anger turned into joy, and he followed the crowd in his spirit form. Seeing your relationship with this king forgives your willfulness, Hyunryong. Thank you very much, king. Wuming smiled without turning his head. Soon, Wuming and others left the Yuzong Mountain Ludong Temple and came to the Yuzong Mountain Big Cave. Wuming, Gilgamesh, Cuculin, Matthew, Anna, Stheno, Uriali, Gadatsi, Olga Marie, Sakura Madu. 7 servants and 3 masters, the troops that caused the chaos of this era, arrived at the Demon King's castle. Chapter 368. Looking at the hole filled with magic, Gadatsi and the others couldn't help but tense up. Even Sakura Madu felt the danger inside the big hole and leaned into Anna's arms in fear. Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone. At this time, a voice came from the hole. After hearing this voice, Wuming instantly knew who it was. After all, the two of them had a deep hatred for each other. This voice is... Olga Marie was a little excited. Matthew and Gadatsi were also surprised. Even Roman, who turned off the virtual screen to make it easier for everyone to move, appeared again. Everyone looked at the shadow. A figure came out from the shadow of the hole, wearing a green top hat, green clothes, brown hair, and a gentle smile. Lev! Olga Marie shouted excitedly. That's right, it was Lev, Lev Lenore Floros. Lev, it's great that you're okay. Olga Marie was about to walk over, but she was stopped by Wuming and interrupted. Calm down, Olga, he came from the enemy's base. Olga Marie looked at Wuming and then looked at Leviticus. Although her eyes were still anxious, Olga Marie had calmed down and wouldn't defect to the enemy. After Wuming's persuasion, Olga Marie was now very calm. If it was the previous Olga Marie, she would have rushed over when she heard Lev's voice. Lev, are you still alive? At this time, Roman asked cautiously. Ah, it's Romani. I remember I should tell you to go to the control room immediately. Why didn't you listen to me? Although Lev still had a gentle face and tone, everyone could feel the anger in his words. Lev. Romani looked at Lev in disbelief. Now, not only Roman, but also Matthew and Gadatsi had seen that there was something wrong with Professor Leviticus. Lev. You're not a fake Lev, are you? Olga Marie asked Leviticus. Years of experience and habits made Olga Marie see that, as Wuming said, the other party was not a fake Leviticus. Yes, Olga, I am indeed Lev, Lev Lenore Floros. Lev smiled and looked at Olga Marie. By the way, you're also working hard, Olga. Lev said. It's okay, but I have a follower. Olga Marie smiled. She also saw that this Professor Lev was a little different from the previous Lev, but there was no doubt that this was the real Leviticus. However, Lev's words made Wuming's words. Later, as if confirming Wuming's guess, Lev said those words. You actually died a long time ago. Sure enough, Wuming frowned. Since Lev said to let Roman go to the control room, Wuming guessed that the explosion in the control room was Lev's doing. Now, it seemed that he was right. After Lev finished speaking, Olga Marie was a little sluggish and made a puzzled sound. I'm dead? Olga Marie said with some disbelief. That's right, Olga. I put the bomb under your feet. I didn't expect you to still be alive. No, I should say that you're still alive in the state of a spirit, Lev explained to Olga Marie kindly. The bomb, under my feet. Olga Marie's voice was a little trembling. Yes, Olga, now you can't go back to Chaldea, because your body is dead. There is only one result if you go back to Chaldea, that is, with the disappearance of your consciousness. In an instant, Lev's expression became terrible, and the corners of his mouth almost reached his ears. I am already dead. Olga Marie said with a desperate and trembling voice. Director. Gadatsi, Matthew, and Roman were also affected by Lev's words, and looked at Olga Marie sadly. Pa! Suddenly, someone flicked Olga Marie's forehead. It hurts. Olga Marie covered her forehead, and looked at the guy who flicked her forehead with tears in her eyes. You lost hope because of the enemy's words? This is not what my master should be like. Wyrm looked at Olga Marie's eyes and said helplessly. Humans are a group of creatures with short lives and afraid of death. But because of this, humans will do something when they know that sooner or later they will die. Then, Wyrm turned to look at Leviticus. Let's not talk about whether this guy is lying to you or not. If we can't restore this singularity, I'm afraid that not only Olga Marie, but also Tachika, Matthew, and even Roman will die. After Wyrm said that, everyone realized. Yes, if the singularity couldn't be restored, humans would be completely wiped out in a year, and there was no difference between dying now and dying a year later. So, even if it was for themselves, in order to save humans, they had to win. And didn't I say that I can lend you my shoulder at any time? I like you very much as a master. Wyrm smiled. I'm sorry. Olga Marie apologized, and wiped the tears from her eyes. I am the director of Chaldea, the master of the famous clock tower Animusphia, one of the 12 monarchs, Olga Marie Asmaret Animusphia, the captain of the team who restored the singularity and saved humanity. How could I fall here? At this time, Olga Marie regained her confidence. Lev betrayed me, but I still have my followers, I still have people I can rely on, I will never fall. Seeing Olga Marie like this, Gadotsi and the others breathed a sigh of relief and smiled with relief. Sure enough, assassin, you are a scourge. Looking at Olga Marie who regained her courage, Lev looked at Wyrm expressionlessly. Then I'm sorry, I especially like to scourge those villains, especially the fake gentleman wearing a green hat. With that, Wyrm deliberately took off his black hat and made a noble salute. Did you know? I was going to burn down this era and give the Holy Grail to Queen Arthur. I was going to leave this era, but who told me to meet you? Lev didn't care about Wyrm's mockery and continued speaking calmly. My idea is right, the last master of humanity can't do anything, the dead Olga Marie can't do anything, these tools, followers, can't do anything. Then, Lev showed a terrible expression. The most important thing is you. But, in an instant, Lev returned to his amiable appearance. But it doesn't matter, you're going to die anyway, I'll be merciful and forgive all the things that annoy me. You really dare to say that? Bastard! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Poochie. Chapter 369. For noble phantasms pierced through Lev's body. Gu-Dazi couldn't help but turn his head away. No matter what, they were acquaintances after all. He really couldn't bear to look at it. Oh, Hero King is still grumpy. Although Lev was pierced through by Gilgamesh's noble phantasms, he didn't die. Everyone looked and saw Lev's body shaking slightly. This was obviously a projection. I've been in Chaldea for so many years. I can use this kind of projection. Roman and Olga Marie frowned. Lev then looked at Gilgamesh, who was expressionless. Ignoring the fact that assassin is here, Hero King Gilgamesh is considered one of the best tools. I wouldn't dare to come alone. Bastard! Gilgamesh glared. Lev's word, tool, obviously angered Gilgamesh. I think so too. With your kind, it's unlikely that you'll face us. Wyrm said sarcastically. Whatever you say. Now, enjoy the feast I've prepared for you. Lev smiled at Wyrm's sarcasm. After that, Lev's figure disappeared like a screen without electricity. This king will crush that bastard. With that, Gilgamesh's spiritual form disappeared. It seemed that he had entered the Yuanzhang mountain. That. Don't we need to take care of this king? Roman smiled awkwardly. Roman's intention was naturally to be careful. However, Wyrm shook his head. She's not angry enough to need us to remind her. Gil can help us find the way. You're really relaxed. Gadotsi smiled awkwardly. Anyone who had a willful follower like Gilgamesh would have a headache. However, Wuming was very relaxed. I think I know her the best in the world. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Let's go in quickly. Then, everyone entered the big hole. However, the moment they entered, Wuming felt as if he had passed through a layer of film. Then, he found that the people behind him had disappeared, and his surroundings had turned into a maze-like stone wall. Is this an enchantment? Wuming frowned. It was probably the enemy's noble phantasm. Wuming could feel that it was an enchantment, and its level was not low. This is troublesome. After all, Wuming and the others had the advantage of having more people and being able to work together. However, the enemy's unknown servant used a noble relic to separate them, which was quite a disadvantage. It seems that I have to hurry up. Saying so, Wuming looked at his gloved left hand. Then, Wuming began to explore the labyrinth. It was actually very easy to crack this type of noble phantasm, that was, to get out of the labyrinth. However, in Wuming's view, this labyrinth was quite difficult, and he was afraid that it would take a while to crack it. However, it was better to move forward than to wait in place, and Wuming could feel a slight connection with Olga Marie. Duh. At this moment, the sound of footsteps in night boots could be heard. Wuming looked at the two figures in front of him, ready for battle. Altoria and Leviticus. Welcome to Chaos Labyrinthos. Lev was the first to speak, looking at Wuming with a pleasant expression. Chaos Labyrinthos. Is that the name of this noble phantasm? Wuming began to think. Yes, I'll tell you directly, this noble phantasm is held by a monster named Militanos, but then again, it's really easy to control a berserker. Lev directly told Wuming the servant who held this noble phantasm and laughed at him. So, your purpose of separating us is to defeat us one by one, Lev? Wuming smiled indifferently. That's right, but don't be mistaken, I don't want to use King Arthur's sacred sword. Lev admitted generously. I think so. Wuming sneered. The feeling between Wuming and Lev was comparable to life and death enemies, and they would not let go of the opportunity to kill each other. You didn't leave this era, but stayed, I'm afraid it's because of this, right? Wuming asked. Yes, I don't know why, but when I think of killing you with my own hands, I feel very happy. Lev grinned and looked at Wuming ferociously. Spare, you go and deal with the last master of Chaldea, I specifically left them behind. Lev ordered Altoria. Altoria did not say a word and left step by step. It seemed that as Lev said, she wanted to deal with Wuming with her own hands. Wuming thoughtfully looked at Artoria who was leaving. He always felt that Artoria obeyed Lev's orders for another reason. Then, let's begin, assassin. Lev laughed ferociously, and his body began to squirm and change. As for the others, Gilgamesh looked at the empty space around him. This seemed to be the center of the labyrinth, and it was the size of a few football fields. Standing opposite Gilgamesh was a spearman in golden armor. A rat that escaped dares to appear in front of this king again. Gilgamesh looked at Karna with disdain. I have no choice. Only I can defeat you, so the master sent me here, Karna said emotionlessly. Then, are you ready to be cut into pieces? Instantly, countless golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. Karna, who was opposite him, also raised the spear in his hand that was transformed from the Brahmastra. Stheno and Euryale looked at the labyrinth where only the two of them were left, and looked around cautiously. At this time, a scarlet eye emerged from the shadows of the labyrinth beside them. Cuchulain put his staff on his shoulder and looked at the white-haired, red-clothed man with two swords in front of him. He smiled. You must be Archer. How ironic that you're using two swords. Didn't you want to fight me with your staff? The unknown heroic spirit said calmly. You're right. Cuchulain put his staff in a spear position and pointed it at the unknown servant. Come on, Archer. After that, Cuchulain rushed forward. The unknown heroic spirit also stomped his feet and faced Cuchulain. Anna raised her scythe, and the person behind her grabbed onto Anna's cloak in fear, not daring to look at Sakura Madu. Opposite them, a man with 2 spears and a mole at the corner of his eye stood there. "Dirty," Anna suddenly said. "I'm sorry, but this is irresistible. Blame it on the fact that you're women." Gadatsi and the others came to a huge underground cavern. "I'm afraid this is the depths of the cavern. It seems that Assassin and the others were separated from us by some unknown means," Olga Marie analyzed. At this time, the sound of iron boots stomping on the ground was heard. The Dark Knight King appeared in front of everyone. Everyone's battle on every battlefield had begun. Chapter 370. Wu Ming looked at the giant flesh pillar with countless huge eyeballs in front of him and then looked at the black mud-like liquid that it was emitting. He was even more certain that it was related to the origin black mud. "It's just like Darius," Wu Ming said in disgust. Although the shape was different, the feeling that this giant flesh pillar gave Wu Ming was the same as the black mud giant that Darius controlled back then. "Ha ha ha, this is my true form, Demon God Pillar Flawless." The giant flesh pillar made a sound from nowhere. Then, it was Leaf's voice, but it was filled with magnetism. "I've already heard about you from the other demon god pillars. With just an assassin, you won't be able to defeat me," the demon god pillar Flawless said confidently. "I see. Are all of you demon god pillars a whole?" Since Flawless said, "We are waiting," and after learning about Wu Ming from the other demon god pillars, Wu Ming guessed that Flawless and the other 72 demon god pillars were a whole. "That's right. We are a group that is more advanced than an individual human." The demon god pillar swayed. The demon god pillar that pierced the sky gave off a feeling that it would fall. "Then, let's begin." As he said that, Wu Ming's eyes turned red. In an instant, countless fog emerged from Wu Ming's body, blocking Wu Ming's figure and the giant demon god pillar Flawless. The dark mist city, on the other side, outside Yuanzhang Mountain, Iskandar carried Zhuge Kong Ming and drove the divine might wheel to the entrance of the Big Hollow. "Oh. It seems that they have entered the Big Hollow," Iskandar said as he looked at the entrance with traces. "But my noble phantasm can only sense Chaldea's master and a group of people. I can't sense the other servants." Zhuge Kong Ming frowned as he thought of something bad. "You're right, it's my old enemy." Suddenly, a young female voice sounded. "Judging from his tone, I see." Zhuge Kong Ming instantly knew who the visitor was. At the top of the mountain, an ancient China chariot was parked there. A blonde woman wearing ancient clothes and holding a feather fan stood on the chariot. "Oh. Is this someone you know, Kong Ming?" Iskandar asked. "My old enemy, Sima Yi." Zhuge Kong Ming frowned slightly as if he had thought of something. "Just as you thought, Master already knew that you would betray him with the Conquest King. Therefore, he has already summoned the 7 servants." The woman named Sima Yi waved her feather fan and said with confidence. "Ha ha ha, if that's the case, there's an ambush here." Iskandar was not sad but happy at the thought of an ambush. He started laughing loudly. "After all, I've already thought of this situation, so there's nothing to worry about," Zhuge Kong Ming said calmly. Together with his handsome face, he looked like an aloof Prince Charming. "Oh, is that so? Then, take this move of mine." As he said that, several tentacles suddenly shot out from the ground and wrapped around Iskandar's divine might wheel. If Wu Ming and the others were here, they would definitely be shocked because they had seen these tentacles before. "Ha ha ha, just tentacles. They're not enough to suppress me, the Conquest King." As he said that, Iskandar waved the reins in his hands and prepared to use the divine might wheel's lightning to break free from the tentacles. Moo! The 2 flying hoofed thunderbolts roared and broke free from the tentacles. However, countless tentacles appeared in an instant, and these tentacles were much thicker than the ones that wrapped around the divine might wheel. They were like giant trees that covered the sky, and the tentacles instantly trapped the divine might wheel that had yet to fly. "It's not enough. Ha ha ha. Iskandar's arrogant laughter came from the tentacles. However, these giant tentacles could not trap the Conquest King. Moo! As the flying hoofed thunderbolts roared, the divine might will tore apart the giant tentacles and then rushed into the sky. When did you start to use these things, Sima Yi? Zhuge Kongming said calmly. Hee, of course, you can use illegal means at the right time, and this isn't something that I would do. As if responding to Sima Yi's words, an entrance opened in the group of tentacles that were still dancing on the ground. A man wearing a wizard's robe with protruding eyes and pale skin appeared. Greetings, military advisor. As he spoke, the man bowed to Sima Yi. Let me introduce you, this is Castor, magician. His real name is the French Martial Guild Array of the British and French War Species. Because he is addicted to alchemy, he has the Castor profession. It seemed that this person was the one who controlled the tentacles. Sima Yi did not hesitate to tell Iskandar and Zhuge Kongming the real name of the man who came out from the tentacles. Gilles de Rais, on the other hand, appeared indifferent. As you can see, this is the subordinate that master assigned to me. Like a little girl who got a toy, Sima Yi smiled. And, I have more than one subordinate. As she said that, a sword light flashed. Moo! Iskandar's flying hoofed thunderbolt screamed and fell with the divine might wheel. In an emergency, Iskandar grabbed Zhuge Kongming's collar, jumped down from the divine might wheel, and landed firmly on the ground. That sword is. Iskandar, who was also a king, saw that the servant who released the sword light was a king. She had long white hair, rather revealing white clothes, dark skin, and a rainbow-colored sword in her hand. The girl's figure slowly appeared. I am the destroyer of all civilizations. The girl said expressionlessly. This is the Hun emperor who once conquered Europe, known as God's Whip, Attila. Sima Yi introduced again. I have another subordinate, but I don't think it's necessary, so I let her move freely. Sima Yi said casually. How arrogant. This is not like you, Sima Yi. Zhuge Kongming mocked Sima Yi. Hee, other people aside, Attila with the war god's sword is enough to defeat you. Do you want to try? Sima Yi said provocatively and looked at Iskandar. Ha. That's exactly what I want. To be able to fight against the famous military commander Sima Yi, Martial Guild Array of France, and the Hun emperor with the title of God's Whip, this is a rare opportunity. Iskandar laughed and did not look timid after losing the divine might wheel. Then, let me show you my king's road. After a few seconds, the clamor outside Yuanzhang Mountain was gone and it was completely quiet. However, the battle was still going on in a place that could not be seen. Chapter 371. On Anna's side, Anna and the guy with the dual spears were entangled together. Because the other party had promised in his name that he would never harm Sakura Madu, a young child, Sakura Madu stood in place and watched Anna and the other party fight. Delamudo Odina. Sakura Madu said with some worry. Of course, she wasn't worried about the dual spear knight called Delamudo, but she was worried about Anna. Delamudo Odina was the first knight of the Red Branch Knights. He was related to Fergus, Cuchulain, and even Sira. If Wu Ming was here, he would probably be able to recognize Delamudo. The most important thing was that the other party had dual spears and dual swords. Sakura Madu, who had read about the Red Branch Knights, knew that Delamudo's dual swords and dual spears had great power. They were engraved with special Lune runes. Judging from the current situation, Demudo was summoned as a lancer, which made Janto Sakura heave a sigh of relief. After all, compared to dual swords, Delamudo with dual spears was easier to deal with. But it was only easier to deal with. At this moment, Delamudo and Anna were fighting using long and short spears. The red spear was called the magic-breaking red rose, Gidirge, and the yellow short spear was called the sure-extinguishing yellow rose, Gibid. The magic-breaking red rose, Gidirge's ability was actually similar to the sure-extinguishing rune, Rulebreaker. It specialized in dealing with magic items and techniques, and could completely eliminate magic. The sure-extinguishing yellow rose, Gibid, had the power to cause damage that couldn't be recovered from this spear. This was also somewhat similar to Anna's scythe, but Anna's scythe also targeted immortality, which the sure-extinguishing yellow rose, Gibid, didn't have. But because of this, the confrontation between Anna and Delamudo made Sakura Madu nervous. Delamudo was a hero who had been famous for a long time, and Anna was an immature young Medusa. In terms of close combat, Anna was quite at a disadvantage. And for monsters, the hero Delamudo had a suppressive effect on Anna. This was a characteristic of monsters that should be defeated by heroes. In simple terms, the opponent that Lev chose for Anna was really good at restraining her. In just a few rounds, wounds that couldn't be healed appeared on Anna's body. Fortunately, Anna was cautious. These wounds were only minor and did not hinder her from fighting. Although you're a lancer, you don't have superb martial arts, and your spirit base is also quite immature. It's inevitable that you'll be at a disadvantage if you fight with me. It's better to surrender as soon as possible. Delamudo began to persuade. It could only be said that he was a knight with a profound knighthood. He was still thinking about the enemy during the battle. But this was also the reason why Anna and Sakura Madu were still children. Will you let us go if we surrender? Anna just asked Delamudo back. This. Although my lord ordered to kill the enemy, but seeing that your master is still a child, I will plead for her. Delamudo said awkwardly. He really couldn't make the decision on behalf of his master, but he could still plead for mercy. No need to say more. Even if Anna was summoned as a child, she also understood that the weak were prey to the strong, and the weak were lambs to be slaughtered. If that's the case, then I don't need to hold back. As he said that, it seemed that Delamudo was really holding back. Whether it was the craftiness of his spear technique or the speed of his spear, it was more than twice as fast as before. In an instant, a few more wounds appeared on Anna's body. Gradually, these wounds began to affect Anna's performance. Bam! Anna was sent flying and fell in front of Sakura Madu. Sakura Madu quickly supported Anna. Sister Anna. Are you okay? Sakura Madu looked at the wounds all over her body that couldn't be healed. She couldn't bear it. You've already lost. After you kill yourself, I will bring your master away safely and plead for her. Delamudo walked in front of Anna and pointed the tip of his spear at Anna. Anna looked at Sakura Madu and seemed to have made up her mind. Suddenly, Anna's eyes became rectangular in pain. Then, Anna looked at Delamudo. What? After seeing Anna's glowing eyes, Delamudo knew that he was in trouble. This was at least a gemstone-level magic eye. However, just as he was about to shoot Anna, he realized that he couldn't move. I see, Gorgon's goddess. Delamudo gave up struggling. He looked at his body that was turning into stone starting from his legs and smiled. I wish you success. Although what I said was a bit disrespectful, but this time, the master can't let him go no matter what. Delamudo said with a determined gaze. He is a human, an enemy of our heroic spirits. Then, Delamudo completely turned into a stone statue. Then, Anna's wounds began to heal. Now, Anna understood that Delamudo wanted to be killed from the beginning, not because he betrayed the master, but because the master had to betray him. After Anna, who didn't like to use the magic eye, used the petrifying magic eye, Delamudo didn't resist and left the stage. After all, even if he couldn't move, he could still struggle. Anna felt that Delamudo gave up struggling after he felt that he couldn't move at first and accepted his defeat. As the military advisor said, Delamudo lost. The voice of a girl that didn't sound like a human's voice came. Then, Anna and Sakura Madu began to feel dizzy and fell to the ground. This is poison. Anna's eyes began to lose focus. It was a poison that could affect servants. Then Anna tried to look at Sakura Madu. To be able to affect servants, it was a poison that could kill Sakura Madu, who was just a human girl. Don't worry, I don't have the idea of poisoning my prey. With that said, the owner of the voice walked towards Sakura Madu. Anna tried hard to look at that person, but because of the poison, she couldn't concentrate. In short, it was like being short-sighted, she couldn't see that person's face. The only thing that could be seen was the other party holding up the cherry blossoms and smiling. What a delicious food, I won't be polite. Then, Anna's eyes turned black, and she completely fainted. The battle outside continued, but it had nothing to do with Lev, who was the master of the new 7 knights, and Wuming, who was the backbone of the joint forces of the old servants. Feeling the thick fog that constantly destroyed his body, the demon god pillar Flawless sneered. Do you think you can trap me with this enchantment alone? Too naive. Flawless swayed and stood in the middle of the empty city of London full of harmful fog, and said wantonly. I do have the idea of cutting off the connection between you and your servants, but this enchantment is not omnipotent. It can't trap you for a long time. Wuming said calmly. In that case, this will be your hiding place. Dragon of Origin. Flawless said, releasing the acid fog that corroded Wuming's enchantment. When the acid fog was about to approach Wuming, Wuming smiled. Flawless, I heard that you are the demon god pillar in charge of intelligence, right? Wuming asked. So what? Flawless said. His actions did not stop, and Wuming was completely wrapped in the black fog. Then have you heard of the Saver Job class? Chapter 372. In the center of the city of London filled with white fog, on the towering demon god pillar, countless eyes were blinking. At the same time, a black fog that represented an ominous color constantly emerged from the demon god pillar, quickly diffusing in the city of London, trying to swallow everything. And at this moment, a little golden light vaguely flashed from the black fog. Boom! As if something had exploded, a gap was opened in the black fog, and a golden light shot straight up into the sky. What? Accompanied by Lev's magnetic voice, the demon god pillar also made an indescribable scream. Let me praise your courage first. Demon god pillar Floros, after knowing my identity, you should have run away immediately. After all, as an assassin, I can't chase you. Wuming's voice came from the golden light pillar. But you didn't. You thought that I am now a clone, and you can kill me. I have to say, you are extremely stupid. The golden light disappeared, and Wuming's figure appeared. She had short black hair, red pupils, pure white clothes with golden patterns, and a golden headband that looked like an olive branch was firmly placed on her head. That's right, this was Wuming's savior. This was also the reason why Wuming said that he was also a trump card in front of Olga, Marie, and the others. How is this possible? Without the Holy Grail, how can you change your class? Floros said with some horror. Indeed, Wuming needed the help of the Holy Grail to change his class. During the battle with Darius, because Wuming was a class card at that time, his nature was not the same as that of a servant's spiritual body, so Wuming's body in the root could affect Wuming at that time. Now, because Wuming was a servant summoned by the Holy Grail, his spiritual base was different from the spiritual base materialized by the class card. Therefore, he still had to rely on the power of the Holy Grail, just like when he was in Tolifas. And Floros, who transformed into the demon god pillar, knew this, so he was not afraid of Wuming. After all, the Holy Grail had been stuffed into Artoria's heart by him with the power of the demon god. Unless Wuming experienced a heart gouging, he could not change his class through the Holy Grail. Of course, Wuming did not do anything like heart gouging to Artoria. Wuming was able to change his class because of the Holy Grail. After all, Wuming had a portable treasury that could carry all the treasures in the world with him. Why would he need to do anything else? Gilgamesh's treasure vault, of course. This was also the reason why Wuming wanted to meet up with Gilgamesh first. When Wuming first came to Fuyuki City, the reason why he wanted to summon young Jill was to borrow the Holy Grail in his treasure house. After all, Wuming could totally cancel his promise with young Gil, break the promise. After all, if it were Wuming himself or some other powerful profession, he could have completed the mission of coming to this world alone. However, Wuming was an assassin, a spiritual base Wuming Jack the Ripper, which made things a little awkward. This could be considered as Wuming's punishment for cheating. However, this awkwardness was not because Jack the Ripper's spiritual base was weak, but because it was not right. Fog Knight's murder, intelligence erasure, inherent enchantment dark mist, the mist, and Mary Ripper, the lady, were all powerful skills and noble artifacts. However, in the face of something like the Black Mud, it was inevitable that it would be a little difficult to resist. It was precisely because of this that Wuming chose to summon young Gil. This way, he wouldn't owe young Gil anything. However, who would have thought that a woman would appear? Fortunately, this queen was easy to deal with, cough cough, easy to get along with. After all, they were both Gilgamesh, and they both had the Gate of Babylon. They both had the Holy Grail in their treasure vaults, so there was no difference between them. Because he didn't expect the enemy to attack so quickly, and because Wuming didn't have time to ask Gilgamesh for the Holy Grail, he was sent flying by Artoria's Holy Sword Light Cannon, of course, because Gilgamesh's Holy Grail was not the Holy Grail of the Holy Grail War. It was reasonable to say that Wuming shouldn't be able to use this Holy Grail to change his profession. This required Wuming's command incantation on the back of his left hand that belonged to Gilgamesh. The command incantation was given by the Holy Grail of the Holy Grail War, so the two were connected. In this way, Wuming used the command incantation and the Uruk's Holy Grail to successfully change his profession. This was the special condition that Wuming told Olga, Marie, and the others before. Without these two special conditions, the result of changing his profession would not be born. As for how I successfully changed my profession, you don't need to know. Wuming looked at the demon god pillar Floros with a benevolent look. It could only be said that Floros' intestines were green with regret. If he knew this would happen, he would have left quickly. However, there were no ifs in all of this, so Floros still had to bite the bullet. Damn it! You're just a servant. See how I'll destroy you. With Lev's angry roar, the demon god pillar also made an indescribable sound. Then, countless fog rushed toward Wuming, followed by countless heat rays from the eyes on the demon god pillar. Swoosh! With a flash of a sword, the attacking fog and heat rays were all scattered. The sword continued to move forward and attack the demon god pillar, leaving a deep burn mark, as if an undead creature had touched the holy light. Ah! What is this? Lev screamed, and the demon god pillar kept squirming to get rid of the pain. Wuming, on the other hand, was holding a platinum holy sword that looked like Artoria's Excalibur. Its name is Savior's Divine Sword. How is it? It's not bad, right? Wuming looked at the demon god pillar in the air. The sword that just broke the fog and heat rays was from Savior's Divine Sword. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Lev's voice was crazy, and it began to sound a little different from Lev's voice. By the way, now you should feel the malice of the surrounding air, space, and the whole world toward you, right? As if to verify Wuming's words, Floros' body began to gradually collapse. Nemesis of Evil was an EX level skill, and Wuming also hit the demon god pillar just now. Even if Floros had the black soil in his body, it was not easy. How is this possible? I'm the king's subordinate, and you want to defeat me as a servant? Ah! Demon god pillar Floros began to scream, and the indescribable screams filled the entire city of London. At this time, Wuming raised the Savior's Divine Sword. The tip of the Savior's Divine Sword began to gather a heat source, and the heat source gradually became larger, forming a constantly growing sun. So, from the beginning, you have no chance of winning, demon god pillar Floros. After that, Wuming waved the Savior's Divine Sword. Chapter 373. The place where Wuming and Lev were originally located was shattered, and Wuming appeared in the same place. When Wuming first entered, he was wearing a black trench coat and a black hat, and when he came out, he was wearing a white coat with golden patterns and an olive branch headdress. Of course, The olive branch headdress was transformed by Kalis. Wyrm, who came out of the enchantment, was also holding a green figure who was struggling to survive. That person was Lev, who turned into the demon god pillar. At that moment, Lev's green hat was gone, and his green clothes were tattered, and he looked like he was tortured to death. But in fact, Lev just ate Wyrm's attack. Back to the topic. Wyrm's divine blade of salvation only knocked Leaf back to his original form. Knocking back Leaf Flawless was the demon god pillar. It was not that Wyrm was merciful, but it was as if the two were not completely the same person. After demon god pillar Floros was defeated, Lev appeared automatically. Looking at Lev, his spirit had been completely collapsed by the world. Lev's human personality had disappeared, and now Lev was just a medium for demon god Floros. Looking at Lev like that, Wyrm shook his head. It's a disaster to keep him alive. Although his spirit collapsed like a vegetable, his body could still summon the demon god pillar with a specific summoning method. Noble and powerful, wise and kind, I will incarnate a miracle and lead the world to the dawn. After saying that, Wyrm entered the magician's incarnation state. Immediately afterward, Wyrm made a slight stroke, and several lune runes appeared. At that moment, Lev's whole body was burning. After being strengthened by the magician's incarnation, the flame produced by the lune runes was a holy white flame. In just a few seconds, Lev's body was burned out, leaving nothing behind. Since the master is here, I don't know if these servants summoned by Lev will disappear. After all, because of the mutation of the Great Holy Grail, even if the master disappeared, they would not disappear. At that moment, the entire labyrinth began to shake as if it was about to be shattered. Gil? Wyrm looked in a certain direction. Wyrm, who became the savior, could be said to be the closest to the master's strength. Wyrm could clearly feel the destruction of the space. It seems that Gil is also serious. Wyrm laughed. In truth, Gilgamesh should have done this long ago. The only reason he used the good separation sword now was probably because he saw that he couldn't take down Karna, and that Karna's frenzied attacks forced him to take him seriously. Wyrm just waited. Originally, Wyrm wanted to use the sword, but since someone else did it for him, he didn't need it anymore. Soon, along with a series of spatial transformations, the space around Wyrm changed. The surrounding labyrinth turned into a super big underground hole, and in that big hole, there were more than a dozen servants, including Wyrm. But because the big hole was too vast, some servants were far away from each other. Wyrm looked at the servant group closest to him. Euryale was sitting on the shoulder of a little giant with horns, while Stheno was taking care of the unconscious Anna and Sakura Madhu behind the little giant. Wyrm naturally saw that Anna and Sakura Madhu were poisoned, and it was a very powerful poison. So Wyrm quickly went to Anna and Sakura Madhu's side. Have you finished off your opponent? Stheno said in boredom. Although Stheno's tone was light, Wyrm could feel that he was worried about the unconscious Anna. So Wyrm didn't say anything. Golden ripples appeared out of thin air, and 2 bottles of potions fell from it. It was an antidote from the Yggdrasil, world tree, and it was the highest level. Let them drink it. Wyrm quickly handed 1 bottle to Stheno and let Anna drink it. Then, he helped Sakura Madhu up, opened her mouth, and poured it down little by little. Stheno also quickly poured the antidote into Anna's mouth. After seeing Anna and Sakura Madhu's expressions soften, Wyrm got up and went to the bullhorn giant. Because of Wyrm's arrival, the bullhorn giant seemed a little irritable. Quiet down, Astrios. He's one of us. Euryale, who was on the bullhorn giant's shoulder, patted Astrios's head. Then, Astrios calmed down. Wyrm understood. This should be the Militanos that Lev mentioned. I won't ask why this big guy is with you. You must be an enemy, right? Wyrm asked Euryale, who was sitting on Asterios' shoulder. He did not care about Asterios' situation. Yes, that's right. She poisoned my sister and almost turned her master into food, Euryale explained. Food? In other words, she almost ate Sakura Madhu. In front of Wu Ming and the others, there was a monster woman with long horns on her forehead. She wore a revealing thin dress and held a large blue wine gourd in her hand. "Ah, looks like my master has failed." The monster woman wasn't nervous at all. She smiled casually. "Fear the one with wings. Evil people and powerful people are all afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you curses. Evil people can't hit me." Wu Ming disappeared as soon as he finished speaking. This time, Wu Ming didn't stay behind at all. He instantly came to the monster woman's side. The divine blade of salvation appeared in his hand out of thin air. Wu Ming slashed at the monster woman's neck heavily. The monster woman's head was instantly lopped off. At this moment, the head flew towards Wu Ming, who was extremely close. It opened its bloody mouth and bit towards Wu Ming's neck. Bang! Wu Ming sent the head flying with a punch. The head fell heavily on the ground and made a loud noise. Wu Ming looked at the monster woman, who was still alive even after her head was chopped off. He had really become a monster. What a powerful skill. It reminds me of Lai Guang. The monster woman's head smiled at Wu Ming. "You're the one who surprised me. You didn't die immediately even after your head was chopped off. I can only say that you're worthy of being Shitendaji, the great monster of Japan." That's right, the demon woman was none other than Shitendaji. A monster that used poison and didn't die even after its head was chopped off. It held a wine gourd in its hand and ate humans. The only one he could think of was one of the three great monsters of Japan, Shitendaji. "Ah, as expected, I'm too famous. I was actually discovered so quickly." Shitendaji spoke as if she was chatting with an old friend. Wu Ming didn't do anything else because he could see that Shitendaji was struggling at death's door. She wasn't far from dying. "You're really optimistic," Wu Ming said uninterestedly. "Hee, after all, I'm a monster. But it's a bit sad to die in the same way as you." Shitendaji smiled and then moved her body. "This is an order that Master gave a long time ago using the command seal. Run as much as you want." In an instant, countless amounts of poison wreaked havoc. Chapter 374. In an instant, Shitendaji's wine gourd exploded. The wine gourd was like a bottomless pit, releasing endless seven-colored venom. The seven-colored venom exuded a terrifying aura. Although Wu Ming could resist it, Wu Ming didn't think that the servants and masters inside the big hole could resist it. "Run as fast as you can," Shitendaji's head smiled, then disappeared with his body. Only the large amount of venom was left behind. The most important thing was that the venom was still spreading at an alarming speed. Wu Ming used his phoenix avatar that had not yet exited and came to Anna and Sakura Madu's side. "Let's get out of here quickly. Even servants can't resist this venom," Wu Ming said while carrying Sakura Madu. Stheno carried Anna, and Astrios stretched out his hand and let Stheno stand on it. Then Astrios grabbed Stheno and Anna in one hand, and carried Uraili on his shoulder, and began to escape toward the big hole's exit. Wu Ming jumped on Astrios' shoulder, handed Sakura Madu to Uraili, and then took out an item from Golden Ripple and gave it to Uraili. "Put it on Astrios, and then infuse it with magical power. It can speed up your movement." Silent Wonder didn't think that a big guy like Asterios could move that fast. In the end, Venom still caught up to him and forced him to leave the stage. "Understood, then we'll go first." Uraili was serious, which was rare for her. After Wu Ming left Astrios' shoulder, she activated the item. "Ah!" Astrilius seemed to have felt the blessing of this power, so he roared and quickly left the place. Wu Ming looked behind him. Not only the venom, but the ground and even the air were dyed with seven-colored venom. As expected of a monster, it left a lot of trouble even after death. Wu Ming looked helplessly at the circle behind him, then resolutely rushed toward Gilgamesh's position. Because of his phoenix avatar, Wu Ming arrived at Gilgamesh's side in just a few seconds. Because the source of the venom was Wu Ming's side, Gilgamesh's side was not affected by the venom yet. After arriving at Gilgamesh's side, Wyrm first used magical power to burn the venom on his body. Humph. You're late, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh sat on a luxurious exclusive seat brought over from the villa. He propped up his chin with one hand and rested his other hand on the seat. He tilted his head and looked at Wyrm. Although it was a complaint, Wyrm could feel Gilgamesh's happiness from his tone. Not only was Wyrm happy, but he was also happy to meet a strong opponent. Wyrm looked at Gilgamesh, who was sitting on the chair. There was a hole in his chest, and the spirit core that was supposed to be his heart was gone. By relying on his skill to act alone, Gilgamesh wouldn't disappear immediately after his spirit core shattered. This king was a little careless and was stabbed by that guy's Godslayer spear. Gilgamesh smiled indifferently and waved his hand. And Karna, who was nowhere to be seen, had undoubtedly left the arena. Really, I told you not to be careless. It seems that you can't do anything without me. Wyrm didn't feel sad. Sadness would be an insult to Gilgamesh, so he teased Gilgamesh. You really dare to say that, Hyunryong? Gilgamesh glared at Wyrm. However, Gilgamesh's anger turned into joy. Forget it. This king was happy on this trip, so I won't argue with you. Gilgamesh smiled and closed his eyes. Clatter, at this moment, the sound of chains came. Immediately afterward, Gilgamesh felt something familiar touching his cheek. Gil, it was the voice of his best friend. Gilgamesh suddenly opened his eyes. A golden chain was on Gilgamesh's body, and the chain touched Gilgamesh's cheek. If it's you, this should be your wish. Wyrm stretched out his arm, and the chain stretched out from Wyrm's arm. Sure enough, you two know this king best. After that, Gilgamesh turned into pure magic and disappeared, leaving the chair behind. It's nice to meet you again. Goodbye, Gil. The chain made a pleasant female voice. To meet me and Enkidu again, this is your wish, Gil. The chain once again wrapped around Wyrm's arm, and with a flash of golden light, the chain was hidden. Then, Wyrm went to the place where Cuchulainn and the unknown white-haired red-clothed servant were. When he came to the two, they were sitting down and chatting. Yo, senior brother, seeing Wyrm's arrival, Cuchulainn greeted him warmly. What's going on with you two? Wyrm was stunned by the scene. This guy is a traitor, and his purpose is to repair this singularity. Cuchulainn pointed to the white-haired red-clothed servant. It's just for work reasons. The white-haired red-clothed servant said expressionlessly. Looking at the approaching blue circle, Wyrm looked at the two. Are you not going to leave? He could see that the two were not going to leave and were ready to leave. You've defeated that demon god pillar, so you don't need me anymore. Also, I made a bet with this guy to see who can't hold on and leave first. Cuchulainn smiled. Oh yes, this guy told me about the demon god pillar. Cuchulainn pointed to the white-haired red-clothed servant. The main enemy has been killed, so I should go back. The white-haired red-clothed servant continued to say expressionlessly. What? You're cheating. Cuchulainn said excitedly. It's your fault for being stupid, Cuchulainn. The white-haired red-clothed servant smiled proudly. When they came to the big hole, the white-haired red-clothed servant told Cuchulainn his purpose. He said that the enemy had been killed, and there was no need to fight anymore. After that, he saw Shitendaji's wine gourd explode, and the whole big hole began to become a poisonous hole, so he made a bet with Cuchulainn to see who could hold on first. After knowing that the mastermind behind the enemy had been killed, Cuchulainn, who was not satisfied with the fight, said that of course, he could fight with him. That was what led to the current scene. Cough. You're bluffing. Cuchulainn spat out blood and looked at the white-haired red-clothed servant rather unhappily. The poison that had invaded here began to erode the two's spiritual base. Cough. I told you, it's your fault for being stupid. The white-haired red-clothed servant also spat out blood and said weakly. Soon, the two turned into blue magic particles and disappeared. What a bunch of idiots. Wuming shook his head helplessly and looked at the last servants' gathering place in the big hollow. The black holy sword slashed on the white holy shield, which was extremely harsh in this big hole with only a few people. Chapter 375. Matthew. Godatsi watched from a distance. The aftermath of the clash between the holy sword and the holy shield made her unable to get close. Olga Marie frowned and looked around worriedly. Venom was almost here. Damn it! King Arthur has been entangling Matthew. We can't retreat at all. Olga Marie had suggested that they meet up with the others as soon as they left Chas Labyrinthos, the eternal maze of the inherent enchantment. However, Artoria was not one of them, and she would not let go of the prey in front of her. In this way, until Shutendaji's wine gourd was activated and began to turn the big hole into a poisonous area, Matthew was still resisting Artoria. Ah! That guy, does he want to drag us down with him? Olga Marie scratched her head and said irritably. Matthew has already taken 3 of King Arthur's noble phantasm, and now he's barely holding on. Godatsi looked at Matthew, who was already a little unstable, and said worriedly. Godatsi and Olga Marie were only humans, and they could not interfere with the battle between Artoria and Matthew. Just when the two were at their wits' end, a white gold figure rushed past Godatsi and Olga Marie. It was Wuming. Assassin! Godatsi and Olga Marie were both surprised, and then they were happy. Wuming nodded to the two, and then rushed to Matthew and Artoria in an instant, holding the sword of salvation and cutting them apart. Assassin! Senpai! Great! You're here. Matthew weakly leaned on his shield and looked at Wuming. Godatsi and Olga Marie saw this and quickly ran to Matthew's side, supporting the weak Matthew. Artoria, on the other hand, stood there quietly without saying anything. Wuming took out a red recovery potion from the golden ripple and tossed it to Godatsi. This is a recovery medicine. Give it to Matthew later, Wuming instructed. Godatsi caught the recovery potion in a panic and nodded solemnly. Olga Marie, who was supporting Matthew, shouted seriously and nervously. Assassin, this place is about to become a poison zone. We need to leave quickly. After all, Olga Marie was also a first-class magician. She could still see that the poison that was close to everyone was a noble relic poison that was effective against servants. You guys leave first, Wuming said, raising his hand in the direction of Olga, Marie, and the others. Gate. Following the recitation of the spell, a dark purple hole appeared under the feet of Olga and Marie. This was the long-awaited portal. Wah! Along with the sound of panic, the 3 of them successfully fell in. Don't worry, the other side of the portal is safe at the foot of the Yuanzhang mountain. I'll be there in a while. Wuming said to the portal, but he didn't know if Olga Marie and the others could hear him. Snap. Wuming snapped his fingers, and the portal closed. Lia, long time no see. Wuming smiled at Artoria. Artoria picked up the mask that fell on the ground and put it on her face. Come on, if you want to restore this era, you must defeat me. Artoria said and raised the black holy sword. Whether it was Wuming or Artoria, both of them knew that the Holy Grail was the key, and the Holy Grail had been placed in Artoria's heart by Leviticus. The Great Holy Grail in Winterwood City was not the huge female sculpture that Wuming obtained from the Battle of the 14 Horsemen, nor was it the cup-shaped Holy Grail in Gilgamesh's treasure vault that Wuming had used. It was a rather complicated technique. The reason why Wuming saw a Holy Grail in Artoria's heart before was just the manifestation of the Holy Grail technique. But after Lev's series of manipulations, the Holy Grail technique had turned into a Holy Grail. In short, the Great Holy Grail in Winterwood City was no longer a technique. When Wuming transformed into a saver, he noticed the strangeness of the Holy Grail through his connection with the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail in Artoria's heart was the product of the combination of the Holy Grail brought by Lev and the Holy Grail in Winterwood City. You obey Lev because you want to maintain this singularity, right, Lia? Wuming did not continue the topic of Artoria. Instead, he talked about something else. Yes, that's right, Artoria admitted frankly. It was also when Wuming changed his class through the Holy Grail that Wuming realized this. This era was a singularity caused by the Holy Grail, but the Holy Grail would also maintain this singularity. This was also why Chaldea wanted to recover the Holy Grail. Because after the Holy Grail was recovered, this era would change back due to the self-recovery of the world. And the reason why they wanted to maintain this singularity, Wuming thought it was because of Leviticus. Even if I don't accept his identification, other servants will become the ones who hold the Holy Grail in this era. In that case, it would be better for me to protect the Holy Grail, Artoria said lightly. Sure enough, even if King Arthur became a Dark King, he was still the same King Arthur, just a little bit colder. This was also the reason why he kept chasing after Matthew. That child has not fully inherited Galahad's power. She is too young. She must be trained. I knew it. Wuming could not help but laugh. Sure enough, because he did not like Matthew, who had power but could not use it, King Arthur chose to train her. That was why he kept pestering Matthew and did not let them leave. Sure enough, the Holy Grail War is a sinful consciousness. The first meeting between you and me after a long time ended in this way. Wuming said as he raised the blade of salvation. In the big hole that had completely turned into a poisonous area, black and golden light shone. Outside Yuzo Mountain, Astralis carried Euryale, Stheno, Anna, and Sakura Madu and met Olga Marie and the others at the foot of the mountain. But it was not really a meeting, because Astralis did not plan to run down the mountain. Stop at last, Astelius. You are so naughty, Euryale reprimanded Astelius in annoyance. I'm sorry. Astralis stuttered as she apologized. Because the item Wuming gave me was too useful, Astralis could not stop at all. She only stopped when she was about to reach the foot of the mountain. She just happened to run into Olga Marie and the others who had been teleported by Wuming through the portal. Senpai, are you okay? Matthew asked worriedly as he supported Gadatsi, whose eyes were already swollen. I'm fine, Matthew. Gadatsi shook her head and smiled at Olga Marie. Matthew is over there. Olga Marie pointed at Matthew helplessly. Wasn't he completely out of his mind? Matthew was even more worried now. Thank you so much, leader. Gadatsi smiled awkwardly. Senpai, let's go and rest first. Sorry for being rude. Matthew bowed slightly to everyone and then helped Gadatsi to a nearby rock. You guys escaped too. Is that so? Stheno got down from Astralis and said to Olga Marie. Yeah, assassins seem to have used some kind of spatial magic to teleport us here. Is that so? That means that man is still in the poisonous area. Calculating the time, the big hole in Yuzo Mountain had almost completely turned into a poisonous hole. Asterisk boom. Asterisk suddenly, there was a huge explosion. Yuzo Mountain exploded. Chapter 376. Boom. Suddenly, Yuanzhang Mountain exploded. From the middle of Yuanzhang Mountain to the top, it was completely destroyed by the explosion. Due to the intensity of the explosion, not many rocks fell to the foot of the mountain. Instead, most of the rocks that fell were small stones. What happened? Gadatsi was shaken to the point that he was completely awake. Senior, Yuanzhang Mountain exploded. Matthew said awkwardly. Gadatsi looked at Yuanzhang Mountain in a daze and realized that it had indeed disappeared. It must be caused by assassins' battle with King Arthur. Olga Marie frowned. Wuming could not return safely from an explosion of this magnitude. Don't worry. His strength is far beyond your imagination. Stheno and Euryale smiled mysteriously and said to Olga Marie in unison. After all, Stheno and Euryale had accidentally found out about Wuming's true identity. I hope so. Olga Marie sighed. At that moment, a figure walked out from the forest at the foot of Yuanzhang Mountain. However, this figure was in a sorry state. Zhuge Kongming. Olga Marie called out this figure's name. What happened? Isn't the Conquest King with you? Seeing Zhuge Kongming's sorry state, Olga Marie had a bad feeling. The Conquest King has already left, Zhuge Kongming said calmly. Then, he told everyone what had happened. After Iskandar activated his Ionioi Heteroi, he brought himself, Zhuge Kongming, Sima Yi, Gil de Rais, and Attila into the inherent barrier. Then, with the support of Zhuge Kongming's military skills, Iskandar led his army and showed a crushing state as they crushed the enemy. Soon, in the chaotic battle, Gil de Rais and the sea demons he summoned and controlled were all killed. In any case, Sima Yi was a rider. Thus, he managed to survive on the battlefield with his chariot. Sima Yi felt bitter in his heart. It wasn't that he couldn't win, but that he didn't have an army. Although Sima Yi was summoned as a rider, she was the same as Zhuge Kongming. Both of them had strategist skills and noble relics. In other words, both of their noble relics were almost the same. However, in the face of tens of thousands of enemy troops, Sima Yi wanted to use Zhuge Kongming's empty fort strategy, but unfortunately, he didn't even have a fort. Sima Yi had no choice but to use his relic to give Iskandar's army a debuff. Subsequently, Sima Yi used the command incantation to summon Attila, who had been killing non-stop in the army, to summon the war god's sword. The enemy servant has a command spell that can control other servants. Olga Marie was surprised. Although it didn't sound nice, it was too bold to let a tool manage another tool. After all, there was a possibility of a backlash. If the servant was fed up with its master, it could use the command spell to order the servant it controlled to kill its master. After all, the command spell was in the servant's hands. The most important thing was that the servant being controlled was the European destroyer, Attila the Hun, who was known as the Whip of God. The rainbow-like lightsaber instantly wiped out almost two-thirds of the entire Ionioi's army, Zhuge Kongming said in a heavy tone. There was no doubt that Iskandar had been defeated. If it were not for the Ionioi Heteroi protecting Iskandar and Zhuge Kongming, the two of them would have returned to the martyr's palace when Attila released the first wave of noble artifacts. After that, before he was completely defeated, Iskandar used his own power to send Zhuge Kongming out of his inherent barrier. As soon as Zhuge Kongming came out of the inherent barrier, he discovered the whereabouts of Olga Marie and the others. Looking at the time, the Conquest King should have already left. Saying that, Zhuge Kongming took out a cigar out of nowhere, put it in his mouth, and took a deep breath. Are you the only servants left on our side? Have the hero king and the others all left? Zhuge Kongming asked. They are still in the Yuanzhong mountain. Looking at the current situation, I'm afraid that they are doomed. Olga Marie said in a heavy tone, looking at the destroyed Yuanzhong mountain from time to time. Then let's leave for now. We have to think about how to deal with Attila. If that guy catches up to us, we will all leave. This singularity is completely hopeless. It had to be said that Zhuge Kongming was worthy of being a military advisor. Even if his side was in a disadvantageous situation, he didn't show a trace of annoyance. Although Zhuge Kongming's words were indeed a wise choice, whether it was Stheno's group or Gadatsi's group, none of them moved. Stheno and Euryale simply thought that Wuming wouldn't leave. Asterios only listened to Euryale's words. Anna and Sakura Madu were still unconscious, so Stheno and the others didn't move. Gadatsi and Matthew didn't want to abandon their companions who might survive. Olga Marie was also worried about Wuming, so Gadatsi and the others didn't show any signs of leaving. Zhuge Kongming held the cigar in one hand and sighed. I really don't know what to say to you. Zhuge Kongming shook his head. He's here. Zhuge Kongming suddenly said. As if reflecting Zhuge Kongming's words, a white figure walked out of the forest. Destruction. Attila said slowly, exuding a destructive aura, and walked toward Gadatsi and the others. This powerful aura. Stheno couldn't help but look at Attila a few more times. Euryale and Asterios also looked serious. Matthew immediately held his shield in front of Gadatsi. Matthew, who had drunk the recovery potion, had completely recovered. It had to be said that Wu Ming's potion was very effective. Stheno and the other servants were already in such a state, let alone Gadazi and Olga Marie, who were humans. Since that's the case, allow me to stall for time. After saying those words, Zhuge Kongming turned around. You guys take this opportunity to go to Yuanzang Mountain and see what's going on. Zhuge Kongming walked toward Attila. Everyone was silent for a while. Without caring about the people behind him, Zhuge Kongming took a puff of the cigar, then held it in his hand. Speaking of which, this body's things are really good. Then, Zhuge Kongming condensed his magic, turned it into a white feather fan, and pointed it at Attila. This is the military advisor's ultimate position. Try to break it if you can. Karazuno Jin. Chapter 377. As Zhuge Kongming's voice fell, dark clouds appeared in the sky. Bam, 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 bam. Along with 8 sonic booms, 8 huge 8 trigrams pillars fell from the sky. With Attila as the center, the 8 trigrams pillars fell in 8 directions around him. In an instant, an invisible force spread out, and Attila stopped in his tracks. A formation. Although Attila had been acting like a berserker and always wanted to destroy, he was still the king of the Hun Empire, the gods whip Attila who had conquered Europe. Attila had also dabbled in the military of the East. The unknown force of this formation did indeed stop Attila's footsteps. It's useless, destroy. Attila raised the war god's sword in his hand as he spoke. Suddenly, Zhuge Kongming's formation was broken. Have you forgotten my existence, Zhuge Liang? The blonde girl in an ancient robe rode a chariot not far from Attila. She was the rider, Sima Yi. She was the one who held Attila's command charm. On the other hand, Zhuge Kongming's Karazuno Jin was countered by Sima Yi's primordial chaos array. Sima Yi, you really are a hindrance. Zhuge Kongming knew that Sima Yi was nearby, but he did not expect her to do the same as he did. Humph. Then you can return to the martyr's palace with peace of mind, Zhuge Liang. Sima Yi said provocatively. You should have sensed that our master has been defeated, and we are no longer restrained by him. Zhuge Kongming said calmly. You want to ask why I continue to follow orders, right? It's because you are here, Zhuge Liang. Sima Yi sneered. Even if I disappear and return to the martyr's palace, it was not easy to meet you in the Holy Grail War. The shame of the empty city stratagem will be washed away here. In the name of the command charm, Saber Attila, release your noble charm. Sima Yi raised her right hand, and one of the remaining 2 command charms on the back of her hand disappeared. Attila silently raised the war god's sword in his hand. Destruction, the war god's sword began to spin, emitting a rainbow light. Zhuge Kongming took a light puff of his cigar. He was ready to leave the stage. After all, the war god's sword was not something he could withstand. Clank. Suddenly, a shield appeared in front of Zhuge Kongming. Matthew raised his shield and prepared to block Attila's noble phantasm. Are you an idiot? His noble phantasm is the war god's sword. You're not mature enough yet, so you won't be able to block it. Zhuge Kongming shook his head helplessly. But we can't abandon our companions. Gadazi walked to Zhuge Ming's side. Anyway, we're in the attack range of the opponent's noble phantasm. Since we can't escape, then let's not escape. Olga Marie crossed her arms and said proudly. I don't believe them, but that man. Stheno smiled. If it's that man, I'm sure he'll be able to save me in times of danger, just like Astelius. Euryale stroked Astelius's horn. Ah. That man. I'm looking forward to it as well. Zhuge Kongming took another puff of his cigar. With that, Attila swung the war god's sword, and a rainbow-colored stream of light rushed towards Gadazi and the others. Matthew! Gadazi shouted. Yes. Senpai. Mashu inserted the shield into the ground. Lord Chaldeas, simulating the beginning of humanity. In an instant, a huge wall of chalk appeared, protecting everyone behind it. Boom! The colorful stream of light hit the holy chalk wall, and Matthew struggled to resist it. Ah! Her teeth were clenched, her body was trembling, but she didn't move. She was sweating profusely. All of these represented Mashu's difficulties at the moment. Thinking about Olga Marie's words, Gadotsi walked to Matthew and held his hand. Hang in there, Matthew. Block the enemy's noble phantasm. 2 of the 3 command charms on the back of Gadotsi's hand disappeared. Looking at Gadotsi's determined eyes and feeling the endless power that came from nowhere, Matthew smiled and nodded heavily. Ah! Along with Matthew's shout, the chalk wall became more real and complete, and the shape of the outer wall was faintly visible. Boom! The power of the war god's sword reached the end, leaving a regretful sound on the chalk wall that it did not break. The 7-colored radiance was blocked, and the god's whip was blocked by the holy chalk wall. How is it possible? Sima-Yi looked at the shield that blocked the war god's sword in surprise. If that's the case, let's do it again. Sima-Yi said, raising the back of his hand again. That's it. Suddenly, Wu Ming's voice came. Pfft. The sound of flesh being pierced by a sharp blade sounded, and Sima-Yi's heart and soul core were pierced. Pfft. Sima-Yi spat out a mouthful of blood, looked at the platinum blade that went through his body, and turned to look at the assassin. I see, King Arthur lost. Sima-Yi's body began to glow, and little blue particles were emitted from Sima-Yi's body, which was a sign that he was about to leave. Damn it! What a pity! Zhuge Liang. Saying that, Sima-Yi turned into magic and disappeared. Wu Ming put away the sword of salvation and looked at Attila. Destroy! Attila said, and ran toward Wu Ming. But in the process, Attila's body began to dissipate, and Attila was about to leave. Attila looked at Wu Ming's left hand and understood. I see, so the Holy Grail war is over. Wu Ming's left hand held a small golden cube that looked like a Holy Grail. It was the Holy Grail that Wu Ming defeated Artoria. Attila was forced to return to the martyr's palace. Attila, God's whip, it's time for you to go back. Go back to your martyr's palace and continue to dream. Wu Ming said something strange, and raised the Holy Grail. Attila did not say anything, and waited quietly. With Wu Ming's unknown manipulation, Attila's body instantly collapsed, and he turned into pure magic and disappeared. At this time, the holy chalk wall disappeared, revealing the faces of Gadotsi and the others. Assassin! Olga Marie and Gadotsi shouted in surprise. Senior assassin! Matthew was supported by Gadotsi, and he said weakly, but Matthew's voice was full of joy. That man is finally here. Stheno smiled. That's too slow, Euryale said. Oh, cried Asterios, not knowing what was going on. He really came, but it's finally over. Zhuge Kongming breathed out a mouthful of smoke and relaxed. The chaotic Holy Grail War of the 21 Servants. Chapter 378. Indeed, out of the 22 servants, only 7 of us are left. Saver Wu Ming, Shielder Matthew, Assassin Stheno, Archer Euryale, Berserker Asterios, Lancer Anna, and Caster Zhuge Kongming. Wu Ming walked to the side of the crowd, holding a glowing golden Holy Grail in one hand. This glowing object is the Holy Grail that caused the chaos in this era. I temporarily used the Holy Grail to stabilize this singularity, so this singularity has not been repaired yet. In other words, you can control this singularity at will? Zhuge Kongming said lightly. Wu Ming became the guy who controlled this singularity. Zhuge Kongming meant that if Wu Ming wanted to, he could become the king of this era. Of course, not to mention Stheno and Euryale, even Gadotsi and the others didn't think that Wu Ming would choose to become the king of this singularity. Zhuge Kongming was not familiar with Wu Ming, so he deliberately said that. If Wu Ming didn't mean that, then everyone would be happy, and Zhuge Kongming would be relieved. If Wu Ming had such intentions, he was now the king of this singularity anyway. Zhuge Kongming did not have the ability to defeat Wu Ming, so there was no harm in saying a few words before he died. I'm not interested in becoming the king. You think too much, military counselor. Wu Ming shook his head lightly. Now, looking at Wu Ming holding the Holy Grail, whether it was Olga, Marie, and the others, or Roman, who was projected on the screen, they were all relieved. After all, if Wu Ming really wanted to do that, they really couldn't do anything. That's great, then our mission is complete. Roman had a lazy look on his face. You better cheer up, Roman. Even if all the enemies are destroyed, you can't be so lazy. Olga Marie instantly reprimanded Roman. Roman could only nod speechlessly. Yes, yes, yes. I know, Director, did Mr. Cuculin and the others also leave? Matthew asked Wu Ming. Yes, whether it's Karna, Gilgamesh, or Cuculin, they all left. Really? I haven't thanked them yet. Matthew said with some regret. Ha, don't worry, Matthew. You have already formed a destiny, and you will meet again. Wu Ming smiled and comforted Matthew. Yes, Assassin Senpai. Matthew's sorrow turned into joy and nodded with joy. By the way, where is Professor Lev? Gadotsi suddenly asked. Everyone then looked at Wu Ming. If it's Lev, he's dead on the surface. Wu Ming's words puzzled everyone. What did he mean by, dead on the surface? I'll show you the image directly. With that, Wu Ming raised the Holy Grail, and instantly, the light shone brightly, drowning everyone. When everyone opened their eyes because it was too dazzling, the scene in front of them changed, from the forest at the foot of the mountain to a maze of tall pine trees and rocks. Is this an image? Olga Marie saw Wu Ming's trick and didn't panic. Image? Gadotsi scratched the back of her head. That's right, it's a projection. I've recreated the scene of my battle with Leviticus. After Silent Wonder finished speaking, a towering pillar appeared behind everyone. This thing is a demon god pillar, right? Zhuge Kongming looked indifferently at this huge pillar of flesh that was filled with eyes and said in detail. Demon god pillar? Roman was a little surprised. What's wrong, doctor? Matthew looked at Roman, who was unnatural on the screen. Nothing, I just learned about this thing through learning magic. I didn't expect the mythical product to reappear. Roman smiled slightly and quickly adjusted his state. However, Wu Ming glanced at him indifferently. As early as Wu Ming saw Roman for the first time, Wu Ming felt a little unnatural from Roman. Now that he had become a saver, Silent Cry saw through Roman's nature. This demon god pillar is the demon god Floros, the 72 demon gods under the command of the demon king Solomon. It appeared in the form of a demon god pillar. Wu Ming didn't say anything, but began to explain the origin of the demon god pillar. Demon king Solomon. Olga Marie looked at the pillar of flesh in distress, and couldn't help but suspect that the real mastermind behind the scenes was the heroic spirit Solomon. Immediately, Wu Ming's figure appeared in front of everyone, but Wu Ming's figure wasn't the current golden white clothes, but the black windbreaker and black hat from before. Then, the demon god pillar began to release the demon mist to attack Wu Ming. However, everyone found that they couldn't hear the sound. At such a close distance, the sound of the demon god pillar is a little too strong for humans, so I omitted the sound. Wu Ming explained. Although Zhuge Kongming and Roman didn't seem to believe it, they didn't say anything. Wu Ming did this for a reason. The conversation between Wu Ming and the demon god pillar involved the issue of Wu Ming's identity. Gadotsi and the others had already suffered a lot, so Wu Ming felt that it was better to tell them later. Because Wu Ming omitted the scene of his conversation with Lev, Wu Ming had already used the inherent barrier. As the scene changed, everyone's surroundings turned into a foggy city. Ah, this is Assassin's inherent barrier. As someone who had been here before, Gudatsi explained to everyone. I know you've been here before. Take a good look. Olga Marie violently pressed Gudatsi's little head, and said rather unhappily. Ouch, ouch, ouch. After that, the demon mist swallowed Wuming, and Wuming used the Holy Grail and command incantation to change his class. In the end, he used the sun, condensed from the Blade of Salvation to defeat Leviticus. After the projection ended, everyone returned to the foot of the Yuanzang mountain. Even if Lev had committed a heinous crime, he was still Chaldea's former companion, so Wuming didn't let them see the scene of Lev's body being burned to ashes by Wuming. Just like that, Lev died, but Floros didn't. Wuming shrugged. So that's how it is. Lev's apparent death means that the demon god pillar is still alive. Zhuge Kongming nodded. According to the demon god Floros, their demon god pillar is a hole, so I think Floros is still alive. Since demon god Floros is still alive, Lev is very likely not completely dead. After all, Lev is the personality of demon god Floros' human body. Wuming said solemnly. In other words. Olga Marie thought of something. In other words, we are likely to encounter Lev in our future operations. Roman said what Olga Marie was thinking. There's no other way. Romani, you're responsible for contacting the people of the Magic Association, and let them support us. Olga Marie said as if she was entrusting an orphan. Leader, it couldn't be helped. Even if they were comforted by Wuming, everyone still didn't think that Lev was lying when he said that Olga Marie was dead. The fact couldn't be changed, and Olga Marie had begun to accept it. At least, she had to do what she had to do while she was alive. Excuse me, even if Olga Marie can return to Chaldea, you can't contact the Magic Association in the outside world, because the world outside Chaldea has been completely burned. Chapter 379. What? Upon hearing Wuming's words, not only were Olga Marie and Roman shocked, but even Gudatsi and Matthew, who weren't nervous at all. You guys don't know? Wuming asked in a confused tone. How would we know? Hurry up and explain it to me. Olga Marie walked up to Wuming agitatedly and pulled on Wuming's collar. Ahem. Calm down, calm down. Wuming tried to break free from Olga Marie's grip, trying to calm her down. Leader, please calm down. Matthew pulled Olga Marie's arm and tried to calm her down. Olga Marie glanced at Matthew, calmed down, and let go of Wuming. Ahem. Let me explain. Wuming adjusted his collar and began to explain what he had just said. Just like Winterwood City, the world outside Chaldea has all been burned down. The reason why Chaldea detected that all humans were wiped out in 2018 is because all humans were burned down at that time. The mastermind behind this is what you think it is, the Magic King Solomon, who controls the 72 demon gods. Stheno, Euriley, and Anna brought Sakura Madhu and Asterios to stand behind Chaldea's group. This was related to Gudatsi and the others, so as servants, it was better for them to step back and listen. If that's the case, I guess the world outside this city has also become a sea of fire. Zhuge Kongming lit up another cigar and explained in detail. After all, as a wise man, Zhuge Kongming and Chaldea's group listened to Wuming's explanation in the front row. Zhuge Kongming is correct. That's because this great fire started in the era of Kanagawa and continued all the way to the year 2018, which is when all of humanity was destroyed. The reason there was a delay is because Chaldea still exists. The reason why Chaldea is fine is because of the influence of its own magnetic field, which preserved the hair color of Chaldea. No wonder we couldn't contact the Magic Association, and no wonder none of the people sent to the Magic Association came back or contacted Chaldea. It's not that there's a problem with the equipment, but that the people sent were all burned. Roman said thoughtfully. That's right. Other than Winterwood City, there are 7 new singularities in history. Roman, go check Sheba and see if I'm right. Wuming then revealed another shocking piece of information. Excuse me for a moment. With that said, Roman's figure disappeared from the screen. After about 10 seconds, Roman's figure reappeared on the screen. Assassin is right. The singularities shown on Sheba didn't disappear. Instead, there are 7 new singularities. However, we can't analyze the locations of the singularities, so we don't know where they are, Roman said seriously. Romani, analyze the positions of the 7 singularities immediately. Olga Marie ordered, and Romani hurriedly went to carry out the task. Yes. Director. However, Roman didn't turn off the screen. Instead, he turned it on and analyzed the singularities with the rest of Chaldea's staff. 7 singularities, without any backup. Olga Marie bit her nails and thought about Wu Ming's words with a headache. She was also worried about Chaldea's future. No one chose to doubt Wu Ming's words. Roman found evidence on Sheba, and it clearly showed that there were 7 singularities. What's wrong? Are you scared by just 7 singularities? Wu Ming mocked. Gadotsi and Matthew were a little surprised. After all, Wu Ming wasn't the kind of person who would mock his companions. Olga Marie was like a barrel of dynamite. She would explode at the slightest provocation. She angrily refuted Wu Ming. Needless to say, Olga Marie's provocation worked very well. You bastard. Who's scared? It's just 7 singularities. I'll let Tachika and Matthew fix it for you. What about you two? Wu Ming looked at Matthew and Gadotsi. I'll do whatever Senior says. Matthew looked at Gadotsi with trust. Seeing Matthew like this, Gadotsi was touched. I'll take Matthew to open the 7 singularities. We definitely will, Gadotsi said energetically. Wu Ming smiled. In that case, I have nothing to worry about. Then, it's time for us to return to the Martyr's Palace, Zhuge Kongming said, looking at Wu Ming. After the Holy Grail War ended, Attila returned to the Martyr's Palace, but Zhuge Kongming, Stheno, and the others still wouldn't return to the Martyr's Palace. Without a doubt, this was Wu Ming's doing. Returning to the Martyr's Palace after the Holy Grail War ended? By the way, when did it end? Gadotsi was indeed a newcomer. She really didn't understand at all. The Holy Grail War ended. The surviving Martyr's Palace, of course, will return to the Martyr's Palace. The Holy Grail War ended after Wu Ming defeated King Arthur and obtained the Holy Grail, Olga Marie said helplessly. Is that so? He. Gadotsi smiled awkwardly. As expected of Zhuge Kongming. Wu Ming praised Zhuge Kongming. Then, Wu Ming raised the Holy Grail. The moment it lit up, Zhuge Kongming, Stheno, and the others' bodies began to glow. Then, summon me when you need me, the last master of Chaldea. Zhuge Kongming finished speaking and disappeared into blue magic particles. Goodbye, Master of Chaldea. Stheno smiled. I hope you won't be so rude the next time we meet. Yuriley also smiled, but this sentence was directed at Wu Ming. I apologize for my rudeness. Wu Ming was speechless. Sister Anna, are you leaving? Sakura Madu looked at Anna and said reluctantly. Yeah. Anna only hummed softly. She still didn't like talking to humans, even if it was her master. However, Anna was smiling. She was glad to have such a master. Then, goodbye, Sister Anna. Thank you for saving me. Sakura Madu smiled and waved at Anna. Then, Anna disappeared in silence. On the other hand, Astrilius disappeared without saying anything. Then, Tachika and Matthew quickly retrieved the Holy Grail and returned to Chaldea. Roman, are you ready for the ray shift? Olga Marie saw that all the servants had left and said to Roman. The preparations were done a few minutes ago, but... Roman showed a sad expression. Gadotsi and Matthew were the same. Ah, death, I know. What Lev said was true. Now that I think about it, I did die in the explosion of Chaldea. Olga Marie said in a confused tone. Didn't I say that I wouldn't let Olga Marie die? Wuming suddenly said. Eh. Gadotsi, Matthew, Roman, and even Olga Marie were shocked. You didn't say that. Chapter 380. Even if Olga Marie can return to Chaldea, that's what I said. Wuming smiled. This left everyone dumbfounded. I thought you were just making an analogy. Roman smiled shyly. That assassin, can you really save the director? Gadotsi asked excitedly. Of course, Olga Marie is my master. The Grim Reaper doesn't have the guts to take my master's life from my hands, Wuming said domineeringly. That's great, director. You don't have to die. Matthew said happily. Ha! Why do I feel that this sentence is particularly strange? Olga Marie laughed. Although Wuming said that Olga Marie was his master, Olga Marie had already noticed when Wuming changed his class. Her contract with Wuming was broken. This was why Olga Marie was so nervous at the foot of Yuzhang Mountain. Olga Marie thought that Wuming had left. Assassin had indeed left. Wuming was now Savor's savior. Olga Marie and Wuming both knew this, but they didn't reveal it. So, Assassin, how are you going to save the director? Roman asked. When Roman said this, not only were Gadotsi and Matthew curious, even Olga Marie was quite curious. You may not know this, but I can make puppets. Wuming smiled and began to answer. Puppets? Everyone was confused. Are you talking about those wooden puppets? Gadotsi raised her small hand and asked. No matter how you think about it, it's impossible. Matthew complained. It's like this, Wuming said. The golden ripple opened, and a figure was taken out by Wuming. Why was he taking it out? Because it was a puppet. This. Is this really a doll? Roman said in disbelief. The others were also stunned. A handsome man with golden hair and fair skin appeared in front of everyone. He was wearing an ancient white robe and had his eyes closed. That's right, this was the male version of Gilgamesh that Wuming had made in Uruk. Isn't this a real person? Are you sure you didn't kidnap her from that place? Olga Marie couldn't believe it. Everyone nodded. They couldn't tell that it was a puppet at all. I knew you guys would say that. Wuming smiled. Then, he raised his hand and reached into the blonde man's robe. Rip! Following the sound of skin tearing, Wuming stretched out his hand and a complete piece of human skin appeared in Wuming's hand. Olga, Marie, and the others were startled, retreating in fear. Then, Wuming lifted up the blonde man's shirt. A complete piece of skin was missing from the abdomen of the doll, revealing the internal structure. Countless mechanical parts were placed in the blonde man's abdomen, proving that this was a mechanical doll. This really is a mechanical doll. Although Roman was from the medical department, he was also a little involved in other aspects. Naturally, he could tell that this was a doll, not a human. Do you still need to look at the brain? Wuming smiled kindly. No. I don't think so. Mashu smiled awkwardly. Gadotsi, Olga, and Marie also nodded. Of course, this is only a semi-finished product. I didn't replace the internal organs. I only made it to control its movements by projecting my mind into it. With that said, Wuming opened another golden ripple. This time, a person that looked exactly like the previous doll came out. As for this doll, it's my finished product. Be it its internal structure, sensory nerves, or magic circuits, they're all top-notch. The materials were all synthesized by me using rare magic plants and rare magic ores, the golden-haired doll said as it walked around before stopping. Putting a spirit into a body like this is no problem at all. His consciousness returned from the blonde doll to the servant's body. Wuming patted the motionless doll and praised it. Sigh. If there is no other way, creating a body like this would be fine. Olga Marie said rather helplessly. After all, who would want to die for no reason if they could live? But I'm not going to create a body for Olga Marie. Wyrm suddenly said. Do you want me to use this body? Olga Marie was scared. Of course not. Wyrm shook his head and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After that, Olga Marie was relieved. Gadazi, Matthew, and Roman were also relieved. I'm going to use this. Wyrm said as he took out a cup from the golden ripple. Its shape was very similar to the Holy Grail. Is this the reaction of the Holy Grail? Roman looked at the data on the display and said with some surprise. Of course, that wasn't the Holy Grail that Wyrm took from Gilgamesh's treasure house. That Holy Grail had turned into magic power and integrated into Wyrm's Saver Spirit base. This is the Holy Grail I got in another parallel world, and this Holy Grail has been made a wish. After that, I slightly modified it. Wyrm smiled. Have you heard of Heaven's Feel? Wyrm asked. Could it be? Roman looked scared. The third method. Olga Marie continued Roman's words. The third method. Matthew was slightly surprised. What is the third method? Gadazi said that she didn't know anything. The materialization of the soul is not something that can be done by human beings. It's a higher level than magic. It's called magic, and the materialization of the soul is the third method. Olga Marie explained Heaven's Feel. Oh. It feels so strong. Gadazi's face was full of surprise. This Holy Grail was made a wish by a somewhat extreme saint. The wish was to materialize the souls of all human beings in the world. Wyrm said. How is that possible? Even the Holy Grail can't materialize the souls of all human beings in the world. That's the product of the third method. Roman said with some surprise. If the Holy Grail was really that omnipotent, then Lev just needed to make a wish to exterminate human beings. If the Holy Grail was really that omnipotent, then the crisis in Winterwood City would affect the whole world. Of course, that saint has other ways to cheat. If we let it go, it may really materialize the souls of all human beings in that world. Wyrm didn't elaborate, then looked at Olga Marie. Through my modification, this activated Holy Grail can no longer affect the surroundings. I decided to let Olga Marie take this Holy Grail and materialize the souls. Wyrm's sentence completely surprised everyone. Hey! Chapter 381. Legend has it that the 5 great spells in the world could only be inherited by 5 people. As long as someone inherited one of the great spells, then the others would not be able to inherit that inherited spell. The previous successor of the first spell had died, and his descendants were said to be under the protection of the Magic Association. The second spell belonged to the Marshal of the Demonic Path, known as the Gemstone Man, Kixiya Zelik Zayubian Ogu, who was also Wyrm's old friend. The user of the third spell had died long ago. The House of Einstein Barons, one of the 3 families who developed the Holy Grail War ritual, were the descendants of the user of the third spell. The Holy Grail War could be said to be an incomplete third spell. The existence of the fourth spell was acknowledged by the users of the other spells, but what it was itself was still a mystery. The user of the fifth spell was the Aozaki family, and the current head of the family was Aozaki Aoko. It was said that the fifth spell was hidden in the magic seals passed down from generation to generation in the Aozaki family. Not to mention whether the 5 great spells were strong or not, they were definitely rare. Among the known users of the fifth spell, Zelik and Aozaki Aoko could be said to be very powerful figures. Although Aozaki Aoko had not Wyrm before, Zelik Wyrm had seen a lot of them. Using the second method, Zelrich merged all the versions of himself from the parallel worlds and maintained his uniqueness. He also had the legendary battle record of defeating the Moon King. Although he was turned into a death apostle by the Moon King, he was still impressive. Although Aozaki Aoko was unknown, she was still active in the magic world with the fifth spell, which was enough to show her strength. This showed how powerful magic was, and the abilities related to magic were also incomparably powerful. Because Wu Ming said that he wanted Olga Mary to hold the Holy Grail that released the third spell, and let Olga Mary's soul, as a spirit, materialize. Naturally, everyone was quite surprised. Don't be so surprised. Although Olga Mary's soul will materialize, that is only the result of relying on the third spell, the Holy Grail. Once it leaves the Holy Grail, Olga Mary will become a spirit again. Wu Ming's words calmed everyone down. To put it simply, the Holy Grail was the spirit behind this human, who had no consciousness. It was entrusted to the Holy Grail and maintained its own life. But, even so, there is no limit to the number of things that are related to magic. Roman had an envious expression on his face. Romani, what's with that expression? It's disgusting. Olga Marie used her poisonous tongue again. Roman is right. If Olga Marie has the ability, it's very likely that she'll be able to master the third magic spell. At that time, not only will Olga Marie be able to leave the Holy Grail and truly live on, she'll also be respected and feared in the magic world. The Animusphia family will also become a family of magic users. Wu Ming's last words made Olga Marie's eyes brighten. That's right, what's the point of working so hard? Isn't it just to inherit the family, not to embarrass my father, complete the protection of human rights, and promote the Animusphia family? Now that the opportunity was right in front of him, why should he hesitate? What do you think, Master? Do you accept my suggestion? Wu Ming smiled at Olga Marie. Although it was a question, Wu Ming could already see that Olga Marie was quite moved. I don't want to choose the materialization of the soul, it's just that I hate puppets. She spoke with incomparable pride. Yes, yes, I understand. Then let's not delay any longer, let's start now. Then, Gadotsi and Matthew stepped back, leaving an empty space for Wu Ming and Olga Marie. Olga Marie stood nervously in place, looking at Wu Ming in front of her, and swallowed her saliva. Wu Ming raised the materialized Holy Grail in his left hand, and raised it in front of himself. Then, the Holy Grail flew up, and came to Olga Marie's front, and without a pause, it merged into Olga Marie's body. That's it? On the screen, Roman shouted in disbelief. Be quiet, Roman. Olga Marie angrily glared at Roman. But, this is the third method, how can the Holy Grail that merged with the third method be so casual? Please calm down, Doctor. Matthew awkwardly smiled, although he was also very curious. Actually, I also thought there would be some kind of light that broke through the sky. Gadotsi whispered. Not to mention that Gadotsi and the others were so surprised, Olga Marie naturally needless to say, but she didn't ask. But unfortunately, it's that simple, did you think there would be any supernatural phenomenon? Wu Ming shrugged, looking helpless. Olga Marie touched the place where the Holy Grail merged into her body and couldn't help but say. But I really don't feel anything, did my soul really materialize? Olga Marie asked. It's not that simple. Wu Ming shook his head, walked in front of Olga Marie, and then put his hand on Olga Marie's chest. Ignoring the stunned Olga Marie, as well as the stunned Gadotsi, Matthew, and Roman, Wu Ming continued. Now you're just a soul that relies on the Holy Grail, because the third method was limited by me, so you're now receiving the incomplete version of the third method, and the effect is only to maintain you and not dissipate when you return to Chaldea. Saying so, Wu Ming's hand on Olga Marie's chest suddenly lit up, and the Holy Grail in Olga Marie's body seemed to have sensed it, and through Olga Marie's body, it appeared at Olga Marie's heart. Like a real heart, the Holy Grail kept beating, and a burst of magic poured out of the Holy Grail like spring water, nourishing Olga Marie's somewhat weak soul. Let's leave it at that for now. As long as the Holy Grail exists, Olga Marie will be an immortal existence. Wu Ming calmly said something that many people longed for. I say, you should have touched enough. Olga Marie lowered her head, and her bangs covered her face, so that Wu Ming couldn't see her clearly. However, from her tone, there was a trace of murderous intent. It's about time. Saying so, Wu Ming moved his hand that was pressed against Olga Marie's chest. By the way, Olga Marie, you're quite something. Wu Ming looked at Olga Marie with a smile. Slap. Wu Ming let go of the hand on Olga Marie's chest, and grabbed Olga Marie's hand that was slapping his cheek. Looking at Olga Marie's shy and angry face, Wu Ming calmly smiled. Well, just kidding, just kidding. Wu Ming let go of the hand, and quickly pushed it away, leaving Olga Marie standing there with her arms crossed in shame. You remember. Olga Marie gnashed her teeth, and said with shame and anger. In that case, I'll help you summon a servant for free. Chapter 382. Wu Ming's words surprised everyone. Summon a servant? Everyone was surprised. After all, I can't follow you back to Chaldea. I still have my mission. But it's not just Winterwood City that's burning. Wu Ming's words made everyone silent. Yes, there were 7 other singularities. If I'm not by your side, let Olga Marie's personal servant number 2 protect you. Olga Marie's personal servant. Number 2. For this strange title, Gadotsi and Matthew couldn't help but repeat it. I don't need a second servant. My only servant is you. Olga Marie directly rejected Wu Ming's proposal. The atmosphere at the scene became somewhat depressing. You know, you're the director of Chaldea. Matthew is Tachika's master. He can't protect you all the time, and I have other missions. I can't stay by your side. Wu Ming persuaded Olga Marie. Leader, I think Assassin is right. If you return, as the backbone of the organization, you will need a bodyguard, Roman tried to persuade him. Roman didn't dare to tell the other Chaldea employees that Olga Marie had died. Chaldea employees were also very relieved because the director was personally carrying out the mission in the singularity. Chaldea employees knew that there were still 7 singularities, and that all the humans outside had been burned. Almost everyone had a trace of abnormality. Fortunately, the director is still here. That's right, that's right. The director can solve any problem perfectly. With the director around, there will be no problem. Although it was basically Lev who helped. Well, let's work hard and clear the 7 singularities together. This was the conversation of less than 20 employees. It had to be said that Olga Marie was indeed quite dignified in Chaldea. She could be regarded as the spiritual support of the remaining employees. Olga Marie looked at Roman, and then looked at Gadotsi and Matthew, who nodded at her. She made a decision. All right, I'll take your advice. For once, Olga Marie wasn't so proud. Wu Ming smiled. Then, let's get ready. Although Yuanzhang Mountain had exploded, the spirit veins beneath it weren't affected much. Wu Ming and the others arrived at the ruins of the Yuanzhang Mountain, which was a basin filled with piles of broken rocks. Due to the clash between Wu Ming and Artoria's noble phantasms, there was a huge hole in the middle of the Yuanzhang Mountain. From the side, it looked like the Yuanzhang Mountain had disappeared. Looking from above, it looked like a basin surrounded by mountains. But because of Shitendaji's noble artifact, this large hole had turned into a poisonous hole. Splash! The sound of flowing water was heard. Countless streams of water flowed into the basin from unknown places. However, the strange thing was that the poison did not corrode the water flow. Instead, it slowly retreated as if it was afraid. If one took a closer look, the water was dark red in color. Soon, the water enveloped the entire basin. Vanish. As Wu Ming's voice came, countless streams of water seemed to have reached the boiling point and began to boil. Countless purple smoke evaporated from the boiling red water flow, and the moment it touched the air, it turned into pure magical power and dissipated. Walala! The sound of flowing water was heard again, but this time, there was no water flowing in, it was the boiling water that existed in the cave that flowed out. The scene changed, countless streams of water flowed back to Wu Ming's palm, and Wu Ming's palm was like a bottomless pit, endlessly absorbing the water flow. Until the last trace of water disappeared. It's done, I've purified Shitendaji's poison. Wyrm turned around and said to everyone behind him. Wyrm just activated his flood and annihilation avatars, and the water of destruction completely eliminated Shitendaji's poison. By the way, assassin, you're no longer assassin, right? Looking at Wyrm's series of actions, Gadotsi said thoughtfully. Roman and Matthew also nodded. After all, the supernatural ability just now was definitely not something an assassin could do. I can't detect assassin's current class either. Roman was a little puzzled. For some reason, the instrument couldn't detect Wyrm's current class. My current class is Savior. Wyrm answered everyone's doubts. Savior. I've never heard of that before. Roman shook his head. Maybe it's because my current class is a class that no one has ever held before, at least for now. Wyrm explained. Wyrm really didn't know who had held the Savior class, so he said for now. Although I don't know anything, it's still amazing. Gadotsi touched the back of her head awkwardly. I use this class to deal with my enemies, and there are very few servants who can hold the Savior class. Chaldea's system probably didn't record this class information. Then, Wyrm acted. Let's not talk about this for now, let's summon the servants. Everyone didn't think about it anymore and followed Wyrm into the big hole. As soon as they entered the big hole, they found that nothing happened here. The ground was clean, as if the previous battle was just a dream. I use my water to clean this place. Wyrm explained. Then, Wyrm felt the magic power of the earth, seemingly casually walked to a place and squatted down. Just when everyone was wondering what Wyrm was doing, suddenly, a magic circle appeared under Wyrm's feet. This is a magic circle used to summon servants, you should know how to use it. Wyrm walked out of the magic circle and looked at Olga Marie. In short, Wyrm asked Olga Marie if she could chant the spell. Of course, I have no problem, I saw the summoning spell in Chaldea. Olga Marie said and walked to the front of the magic circle. Declare. Thy body is under me, my fate is in thy sword. Then, Olga Marie raised her right hand without the command seal. At the same time, the magic circle began to emit a violent magic power. Leader, you don't want to directly summon a servant, do you? Roman was a little dumbfounded. Without a lot of preparation for the summoning ritual, especially without a holy relic, the success rate is very low. Even Chaldea only summoned 3 servants, and Galahad was one of them. Rest assured, this is a summoning circle that I have strengthened. Even if it drags, a servant will be pulled out from the Hall of Valhalla. Wyrm said with confidence. Moreover, without a holy relic, it depends on the compatibility between the servant and the master. I believe that such a servant will be able to bear the burden of becoming Olga Marie's servant. Looking at Wyrm, who seemed to be very reasonable, Gadotsi and Matthew nodded thoughtfully. Even Roman was in a state of thinking. The compatibility between the master and the servant. At this time, Olga Marie's summoning spell came to an end. Entangle the 3 spirits of words for 7 days. Come from the wheel of inhibition, guardian of the Libra. Bang! As if something fell to the ground, the magic reached the maximum value and suddenly exploded, causing a lot of smoke. Vaguely, everyone saw a petite figure in the smoke. So, you're my master. Chapter 383. You are my master. With the tender voice, the smoke gradually dissipated, and a young figure was revealed. She wore a small hat on top of her short blue-purple hair, scarlet eyes, canine teeth, a pair of petite bat wings, and a gorgeous aristocratic costume. Compared to a servant, more people would think that she was a young lady who needed to be pampered. I say, are you sure she is here to protect me, and not me to take care of her? Olga Marie looked at Wyrm helplessly and pointed to the summoned servant floating in the air. She looked like a particularly troublesome fellow. That was what Olga Marie thought. Well, you summoned a servant without using a holy relic. It must be a servant with good compatibility with you. Wuming did not directly answer Olga Marie's question, but teased her. I don't think I have a good compatibility with her. Olga Marie looked at the young lady and shook her head. Get along for a while and see. Maybe you two can get along well. Wuming continued to smile. Hey! What are you doing? I am Pamelia Teeps, the last descendant of the Teeps family. How dare you ignore me? The young lady who called herself Pamelia roared in anger. Teeps. So that's how it is, a vampire, but it is dangerous to let a monster stay with a human. Wuming thought without leaving a trace. Ha! What Teeps family? I have never heard of it. I am the head of the Animusphia family, one of the 12 monarchs of the Clock Tower, Olga Marie Yasmerit Animusphia. Show me some respect. Olga Marie crossed her arms and stared at Pamelia angrily. Ha! What a joke. You are just a human, it is already a great mercy to let you be my master. Obediently offer your blood, the last descendant of the Teeps family needs to replenish her energy. Pamelia's petite wings flapped and flew to the front of Olga Marie, maintaining the same height. Pamelia looked at Olga Marie proudly. Although I don't know why thou, who has no master qualification, can summon a servant and form a contract with me, it doesn't matter. From now on, thou is the servant of I, Pamelia Teeps. Serve me well. Being able to summon a servant without master qualification, of course, this was the effect of the magic circle set by Wuming. After Pamelia finished speaking, Olga Marie's forehead showed a, well. Olga Marie's pain of not having master qualification. Then Olga Marie seemed to think of something, and put one hand on her other hand. So that's how it is. Because she died a long time ago, she's the last of the line. How pitiful. Olga Marie looked at Pamelia provocatively. What? You bastard. Are you provoking me? It had to be said that Olga Marie was right. The reason why it was the last descendant was because Pamelia had already died. Olga Marie and Pamelia stared at each other, as if they were mortal enemies. The two of them are really good together. Roman looked at them arguing like they were best friends and smiled unexpectedly. You shut up. Olga Marie and Pamelia stared at Roman and said in unison, scaring Roman off his seat. The two of them are really good together. Gadotsi and Matthew looked at each other and had to admit this. Wuming looked at this scene, and the worry in his heart disappeared. She was provoked to this extent, but she still didn't kill the human. Although Olga Marie was her master, it was also possible to see the character of this vampire named Pamelia. Although she is a monster, she won't casually kill people. She has her own principles, really like a noble. Wuming nodded. Miss Pamelia, right? Do you understand the current situation? Wuming suddenly asked Pamelia. Hearing Wuming's voice, Pamelia no longer stared at Olga Marie, but looked at Wuming with some fear. She could feel danger from Wuming. Of course I know. It's fine if your human rights are burned. You're not vampires anyway. If I didn't take a nap. Ahem. After all, I was merciful enough to accept your summons. Gadotsi and Matthew looked at Pamelia helplessly. You just said you took a nap, shut up. Pamelia interrupted and showed her small canine teeth as a threat. You're so cute, Matthew. Yeah, I think so too, senpai. Matthew and Gadotsi hid on the side and whispered. As a servant, Pamelia naturally heard it, and then Pamelia's face was full of shame. Since you have accepted Olga Marie's call, then can you protect Olga Marie? Wuming looked at Pamelia with a serious expression. Seeing such a formal conversation, Pamelia no longer cared about Matthew and Gadotsi's ridicule, but looked at Wuming. Since I've been summoned by my master, I won't let my master and servant be in danger. I swear in the name of Teeps. After saying that, Pamelia turned her head away and floated on the spot with her arms crossed in front of her chest. Then, I'll leave Olga Marie to you, Pamelia Teeps. Wuming looked at Pamelia with relief. Leave it to me. Pamelia waved her hand casually. Wait a minute. What's with the atmosphere of entrusting your daughter to me? You're making it sound like I can't live without you guys. Have some self-awareness. Olga Marie yelled frantically. In that case, I will start the ray shift. Everyone get ready. Roman said, and everyone, including Gadotsi and Matthew, nodded. Roman, you bastard. Olga Marie glared angrily at Roman, who ruined the atmosphere. Well then, everyone, have a safe journey. I will go to the other singularities to explore. You must hurry. Wu Ming waved his hand at the group of people who were beginning to spiritualize. Okay, assassin, see you later. Gadotsi waved at Wu Ming. Assassin senpai, please take care. Matthew also bowed slightly. Fu, a little beast appeared out of nowhere and jumped on Matthew's shoulder. Ah, it's Fu. As expected, Fu is very smart. Matthew hugged the little beast named Fu and said happily. Wu Ming took a few more glances at the little guy named Fu. But after seeing Matthew's happy smile, Wu Ming didn't say anything. I will remember you, powerful and mysterious existence. Pamelia said. Wait a minute. Following Olga Marie's sad cry, Gadotsi and the others disappeared. You have to take responsibility for the trouble you caused, Dr. Roman. Wu Ming said to Roman, who was still on the screen. As expected, you saw through it. Roman smiled bitterly. Well, as compensation, I will accept this holy grail of the singularity. Wu Ming said as he raised the cup of light in his right hand. Ah! Oh no! I forgot to retrieve the holy grail. Wu Ming pointed with one hand and the screen disappeared. Then, Wu Ming held the holy grail and merged it into his body. So, where is the next singularity? Wu Ming said as he turned into spirit particles and disappeared along with the holy grail in his body. Gradually, Winterwood City began to repair itself. Chapter 384. Wu Ming dispelled his servant form and returned to the root. He opened his gem-like red dragon eyes and looked around. Wu Ming could see that there were traces of the root black soil around him, and the root black soil was naturally destroyed by Wu Ming's ability and the defense mechanism he set up. After checking other places in the root, Wu Ming was relieved. At least the root black soil did not launch a general attack. Then, Wu Ming took out the Holy Grail luminous object that he brought back from the singularity. Wu Ming didn't bring this Holy Grail back for no reason. Wu Ming's purpose was to use this Holy Grail to explore the location of other singularities. After all, this Holy Grail was arranged by the culprit behind the burning of humanity. Since there were other singularities, there must be a Holy Grail among them. Wu Ming didn't think that these Holy Grails were irrelevant. Wu Ming looked at the black dragon-shaped mark on his dragon claw. Through the mark related to the Holy Grail and the black soil, plus the power of the root, it was not difficult to find the 7 singularities. With these thoughts in mind, Wu Ming began to explore the singularities. Wu Ming grabbed the Holy Grail luminous object with his dragon claw, closed his eyes, and began to search for the specific location of other singularities. After a long time, Wu Ming opened his wine-red eyes. So that's how it is. They want to destroy the important nodes in human history to achieve the purpose of destroying the entire human race. Wu Ming had already explored the specific location of the other 7 singularities. After knowing the significance of these eras, Wu Ming understood the purpose of the culprit behind the scenes. If Europe did not undergo ideological enlightenment, what would Europe be like in the future? If the fleets that opened up new routes to the world did not complete the opening of new routes and circumnavigation of the world, what would be the impact on the world in the future? If humans were extinct in the pre-Christian era, would there still be humans in the future? This time, the enemy possessed by the Black Mud had such an idea. They chose 7 particularly important eras for mankind and sent them the Holy Grail, disrupting those eras in order to destroy mankind. But then again, Uruk was also chosen by that guy. Among the singularities Wu Ming observed, Gilgamesh ruled Mesopotamia's 5th Uruk dynasty. After all, that was an era where God and man were separated. As a turning point for mankind, it was indeed an important one. Speaking of which, I do miss it. Let's take this opportunity to go back and take a look. Then, Wuming's huge dragon head looked at its own dragon arm. That's what you think too, Xiao-en. After Wuming finished speaking, a complicated golden chain appeared on Wuming's dragon arm. Yes, Lord Wuming, I miss Uruk too. Although Wuming could travel through the various eras of the world at will, Wuming did not choose to do so often. Even if Wuming had perfect resistance to time and space and the world would not affect him, it would still leave an impression on the world itself. A calm lake could withstand the fall of a stone, but if it was hit by too many storms, the lake would not be able to remain calm and would take a long time to recover. The same was true for the world. If Wuming left traces in various eras, it would have an impact on later generations. If the impact was too much, the world would collapse. Take for example. If Wuming established faith in an era, then after Wuming left, this faith would gradually be hidden by the world. And if Wuming continued to leave faith in every previous era, then thousands of years later, the world might be filled with humans who believed in Wuming. If it was serious, it was very likely that humans would become extinct. Because of Wuming's time and space characteristics, if he interfered with the world too much, the world would not be able to repair itself. The mastermind behind the burning of humanity also used this method to successfully make all humans extinct in 2018. But in the case of singularities, Wuming's complete version did not have to worry about affecting later generations because after the singularities were repaired and eliminated, all the effects caused by the singularities would be repaired by the world. For example, if someone in the singularities was killed by a servant, then the world was likely to repair that person to be killed by a gangster. Therefore, Wuming chose to go to the singularities with ease. Then, let's get started. With that said, a time and space wormhole appeared in front of Wuming. The Holy Grail was lifted by an invisible force and sent into the time and space wormhole. Then, the time and space wormhole closed. Wuming, on the other hand, nodded in satisfaction. Then, he slowly laid down and fell into a deep sleep. The celestial lock wrapped around Wuming's dragon arm also fell silent. 2600 BC, Mesopotamia, Uruk City, Hyunryong's sacrificial altar. A group of priests dressed in simple and unadorned attire stood in front of a magic array. Siduri, Sama, have you really decided? The priest who seemed to be the representative of the other priests looked at the woman in front of him. She wore a green priest's robe, a white cloak with a hood, and a thin veil covering her face. Only her eyes were exposed, revealing a determined gaze. Yes, I have decided, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will bring back the departed Hyunryong, Sama. Yes, this group of priests gathered at the sacrificial altar to summon the gods, which was difficult even for Kenzaki. The departure of the gods is inevitable, and it is natural for Hyunryong, Sama to leave. It is basically impossible to summon the departed gods back. The representative priest was still trying to persuade her. Yes, Siduri, Sama, even if you persuade King Gilgamesh to acquiesce to your request, it is impossible to summon Hyunryong, Sama back. At this time, the other priests were also trying to persuade her. After all, that lord has the highest level of divinity. Even summoning the clone of the god Ishtar exhausted the life force of the priestess. Siduri, Sama, you have to think twice. Listening to the constant persuasion from the people around her, Siduri smiled. I know that everyone is thinking for me, but there are more and more demonic beasts. If Hyunryong, Sama returns to the surface, then more people in Mesopotamia will be saved. I have made up my mind, there is no need to persuade me anymore. Looking at Siduri like this, everyone fell silent. Then, please allow us to assist Siduri, Sama. The representative priest spoke. That's right, please allow us to assist Siduri, Sama, we also want to contribute to summoning Hyunryong, Sama, please allow us to do so, Siduri, Sama, the others also followed suit. Siduri, who originally wanted to refuse, nodded happily when she saw the same light in everyone's eyes. Then, let us begin. Siduri placed a stone in the center of the magic circle. This was a corner of the Hyunryong shrine. Because the gods were beginning to fade, the divinity in the shrine was almost exhausted, and it was beginning to be eroded by nature. Hyunryong, Sama, please respond to our summons. Siduri put her hands together and began to inject magic into the magic circle. Everyone knelt in front of the magic circle, and Siduri was at the front. After an unknown amount of time, gradually, one priest after another fell to the ground unconscious after exhausting their magic power. Only a few elderly priests merely fell to the ground and did not faint. These people looked at Siduri, who had exhausted her magic power and replaced it with life force, and fell into deep silence. May Hyunryong, Sama bless you, Siduri, Sama. They prayed. At this moment, a voice spoke. Let's not talk about the others first. I don't remember teaching you to waste your life like this, Siduri. Chapter 385. What's this voice? The few priests who were still conscious were puzzled. To maintain a sense of mystery, Wuming's voice was thickened. Only the other gods, Gilgamesh, Enkidu, and Siduri, who was the chief priest, heard Wuming's real voice. Lord Hyunryong. Siduri shouted in an old voice. At this time, the few priests who were still conscious realized that Siduri had become very old. Buzz. An indiscernible sound was heard. The magic circle glowed, and countless streams of pure life energy surged out of the magic circle. They were infused into Siduri and the priests who were lying on the ground. Siduri's life force was replenished. Her wrinkled skin recovered and became smoother than before. Her dry and lifeless hair was like new hair, full of vitality. This is. The priests who were unconscious also woke up. The priests felt the endless life force in their bodies, and felt this incomparably familiar power. The few priests who were not unconscious already knew who the owner of the voice was. It was the Hyunryong that Siduri mentioned, the god that they were desperately hoping for. A light appeared in the center of the magic circle, and a white figure appeared. He wore a pure white robe and had a handsome face. A golden chain was wrapped around the white figure like an ornament. There were also 4 dragon horns on his head. If one looked closely, one could see that one of the dragon horns was definitely an ornament. It's been a long time, Siduri. Wuming smiled at Siduri who was kneeling in front of him. His smile was extremely dazzling. Lord Hyunryong, congratulations on your return. Siduri knelt down and congratulated Wuming. The other priests did the same and knelt down to Wuming. Congratulations on your return, Lord Hyunryong. After all, it was the first time that Lord Hyunryong appeared in human form, so the priests were especially respectful. The invisible dragon god was revered, and the dragon god in human form was even more revered. Being too mysterious would cause a distance. This was also why Siduri insisted on summoning Wuming. After Siduri became the chief priest, Wuming revealed his true form. Although I have already replenished the life force that you lack, it's better to rest a little. Wuming ordered the priests under him. After all, strictly speaking, these priests were all under his command and were his subordinates. Yes, we will follow your instructions, Lord Xianlong, everyone said in unison. Then the priests left, and only Siduri was left. What's wrong, Siduri? Aren't you going to rest? Wuming asked. Lord Hyunryong, Mesopotamia is in danger now, and we need your help. Siduri maintained her kneeling position and waited for Wuming's answer. I know, but your health is the most important thing. You go rest first. I will personally look for King Gilgamesh to understand the situation. Wuming said gently. Looking at Siduri who was about to refute, Wuming's expression suddenly became serious. This is an order. After all, Siduri was extremely stubborn. She would not listen to anything unless it was an order. Understood. I will go back and rest, Lord Hyunryong. Then, Siduri left Hyunryong's temple without hesitation. Where's Gilgamesh? I don't think it's the female Gilgamesh I know. With that, Wuming went to the divine tower in the center of Uruk. Wuming walked on the road and looked at the modern business atmosphere with interest. As expected, no matter which Gil it is, they can all become the wise king. It's Lord Hyunryong. Lord Hyunryong is back. Lord Hyunryong. In an instant, countless people knelt in front of Wuming. Wuming had just started to look at everything on the street when he was recognized. As a result, the scene of countless people kneeling and worshipping Wuming appeared. There's no need for such formalities. Just put your right hand on your chest and bow slightly in the future. After saying that, Wuming immediately took advantage of the moment when everyone had yet to react and instantly ran away. Wuming arrived at the divine tower and began to walk towards the top of the divine tower. Lord Hyunryong. The soldiers at the bottom of the divine tower shouted at Wuming. Because they were on duty, the soldiers did not kneel. Wuming replied faintly, then walked up the divine tower. That shouldn't be. Even the priests wouldn't release my portrait immediately. How did the people recognize me? Wuming walked on the divine tower, puzzled by the situation. Are you an idiot? Your return made Hyunryong's temple shine brighter. The divinity that belonged to you has returned to you. You're as dazzling as a flame in the night. How can the people not recognize you? Suddenly, a voice full of disdain came. This tone, although it's not a female voice, it's quite nostalgic. Wuming smiled. He knew who was talking. Wuming was not in a hurry. He walked slowly on the steps of the divine tower. When he came to the room at the top of the divine tower, because there was no door, Wuming directly saw the scene inside. The blonde man was wearing a rather simple but kingly clothes. He was sitting in front of a wooden table dealing with government affairs on a clay tablet. Seeing Wuming coming here, the blonde man put down the clay tablet in his hand and looked at Wuming with a proud smile. It's been a long time, Hyunryong. Although the tone was quite disdainful, the hidden happiness in it could not be concealed. You too, Gil. Like two old friends, Wuming and Gilgamesh greeted each other. What's wrong? Because you came here as a servant, your brain is a little stupid. If you show your divinity like this, that annoying woman will come. It was still a vicious speech, but Wuming was quite nostalgic. In any case, every Gilgamesh was Wuming's disciple. Yes, I'm sorry. Wuming said. He controlled the divinity that he had been emitting. The reason why he didn't control it before was because Wuming had never had divinity. Therefore, because of the rank, divinity was attached to Wuming's body. Oh, I didn't expect Siduri to summon you. It seems that the summoning ritual of the servant has to be rushed. Gilgamesh's red eyes casually glanced at Wuming, and then Gilgamesh began to throw himself into the clay tablet's government affairs. I heard Siduri say that there is a large number of demonic beasts invading. Explain it to me specifically. Wuming walked to Gilgamesh's side, and with one hand, a rather gorgeous and quaint chair was made by Wuming out of thin air, and then Wuming sat down in front of Gilgamesh. This chair was the style that Queen Sparkle liked in Winterwood City, and now it was directly made by Wuming using magic. At this moment, a tsundere female voice sounded. Hyunryong. Come out. Why can't I find my father? Is it because of you? Chapter 386. Boom. Suddenly, a golden light broke through the roof of the tower, creating a large hole. The person who came was revealed. She had 2 black ponytails, red eyes, and an elegant headdress. She wore revealing clothes and was driving a boat that was the size of 2 people. See, I told you, you would definitely attract this troublesome woman. Gilgamesh looked at the person with disdain. This shameless dress, this bow, and this rude tone. Are you Ishtar? Wuming suddenly realized and looked at Ishtar. Hey! What do you mean shameless dress and rude tone? I am Ishtar, the mistress of the heavens. Wait a minute, I almost got fooled by you. First, tell my father if you are the one who made them disappear. Ishtar refuted Wuming's words, but she quickly realized that she was here to question Hyunryong. Then you are wrong, Ishtar. I was just summoned here in my servant form. Wuming shook his head and denied Ishtar's words. At this time, Gilgamesh also said impatiently. I've already told you that the disappearance of your god is inevitable. Not only me, but even Xian Long didn't do anything. Yet, you relied on your willfulness to barge into this king's palace. You no longer have the protection of your father. Don't even think of leaving without leaving half of your family's property. Although he spoke righteously at the beginning, he began to feel that something was amiss towards the end. Don't even think about it. Don't even think about getting a penny from me. Ishtar stepped back in panic and looked at Gilgamesh and Wuming vigilantly. I am not interested in money or treasures. Don't look at me. Wuming raised his hand helplessly. That's right, you are always like this. You are not interested in money or treasures. You only care about protecting humans. Ishtar looked at Wuming with disdain. It was as if she was looking at a money bank with no money. Humph. Since it has nothing to do with you, then goodbye. I don't want to stay here for a second longer. Ishtar said as she flew out of the roof with her horse Anna. That's why I hate that woman. She's so old, yet she doesn't even know how to walk through the door. Gilgamesh said rather irritably. Well, that's Ishtar's personality. Wuming said as he drew a few lune runes in the air and filled the hole in the roof. In just a few seconds, the hole in the roof created by Ishtar was repaired. Oh, you can still use lune runes. You are now descending as a rider. Gilgamesh looked at this scene with interest. Of course I can. After all, even if I am a rider, I am still a Uruk Hyunryong. As your teacher, how can I not know how to use my magic? Wuming explained. That's right, Wuming descended as a rider this time. But Wuming didn't want to descend as a rider. He wanted to descend as a saver. The reason why Wuming descended as a rider was because of Siduri. Wuming sent the Holy Grail to this era and was about to descend as a saver, but he heard Siduri's call. She's too reckless. This was Wuming's evaluation of Siduri at that time. That's right, Siduri wanted to summon Wuming as a god. In short, she wanted to summon Wuming's original body. And she also knew that even when the priestess summoned Ishtar, she instantly exhausted her life, and only summoned a clone. If Wuming didn't happen to be in Uruk, Siduri would have become a mummy by now. After that, Wuming directly linked the Holy Grail to the summoning circle. Through Siduri's summon, Wuming appeared as a rider and saved Siduri's life. After all, he was someone he knew. If he wasted his life in vain and failed to summon Hyunryong, it would be a little cruel. But you're really funny when you descend as a rider. What do these two pairs of dragon horns mean? Are they funny decorations? If that's really the case, you've undoubtedly succeeded. This king is very happy. Gilgamesh smiled as he looked at the four horns on Wuming's head. Wuming helplessly touched his horns. Kalas was considered a decoration, but there was a pair of horns on Wuming's head. After all, Hyunryong appeared as a rider, so it was normal for him to have horns. Wuming shrugged. By the way, Ishtar descended as a rider, right? Ishtar's current appearance was obviously not the original appearance of Ishtar. Wuming had seen similar examples not long ago, such as Zhuge Kongming and Sima Yi. During the Battle of the 14 Riders, Ishtar also descended as a rider. Ah, that's right. The stupid priestess summoned the Uruk city god, Ishtar, without this king's permission. As a result, not only did the priestess die suddenly, but the woman also came to the Uruk in an incomplete rider. This king is very happy to see that woman in such a sorry state. When Gilgamesh thought of Ishtar coming to Uruk and not being able to find her father, even the gods who doted on her, she was so anxious that she was on the verge of tears. Gilgamesh was quite happy. "You really have a bad taste," Wyrm complained, although he was also very happy. "So, what is the crisis in the Uruk? Tell me about it in detail." Wyrm became serious. "Now I kind of miss those idol gods. At least they don't want to destroy the human race because they have nothing better to do," Gilgamesh said sarcastically. Then, Gilgamesh explained to Wyrm what happened. Enkidu died, and Hyunryong also disappeared because of Kenzaki's retreat. Gilgamesh, who had lost a good teacher and a good friend, was physically and mentally exhausted. So, he abandoned the Uruk and went to search for the elixir of immortality. After some twists and turns, the elixir of immortality that he found was stolen by a snake. At this time, Gilgamesh also came to a sudden realization. This king, who has seen the past and the future, doesn't need to continue living. King Gilgamesh returned to the Uruk, which was about to be abandoned, and as a virtuous king, he regoverned the Uruk and made the Uruk even more prosperous than before. At this time, all kinds of magical beasts that seemed to be Tiamat's children came out of nowhere and attacked the Mesopotamia. Gilgamesh stayed in the Holy Tower and organized the army to protect the Mesopotamia. And now that Wyrm was summoned, it was a few days after the demonic beasts began their attack. Chapter 387. The enemy is Tiamat, and these beasts are undoubtedly the products of Tiamat, Gilgamesh explained. And I have received information that including Tiamat, a total of 3 goddesses have formed an alliance with the purpose of attacking the Uruk, but the other 2 goddesses are temporarily unknown. That is to say, it is likely that they are not gods of the Sumer pantheon, Wyrm asked. It is not impossible, but except for Tiamat, the other 2 goddesses have not done anything, Gilgamesh said while arranging the clay on his desk. I have begun to form a front against the beasts, and now I have begun to build a defensive barrier behind Nippur city. With that, Gilgamesh handed a clay board to Wyrm. Wyrm took the clay board, and there was a map engraved on it. The map clearly indicated that there was a barrier blocking the rear of Nippur. The 2 sides of the barrier extended to the nearby mountains. It was impossible for magic beasts to attack from the mountains where movement was difficult, but Gilgamesh had also sent people to guard it. And the clay board indicated that the beasts were now approaching Babylon city. As long as the place is occupied by the magic beasts, it will be completely turned into a wasteland. This is what happened to these places before. The people who didn't have time to evacuate all disappeared. Gilgamesh pointed to the north of Babylon city. Those were places that had been crossed, and those cities had become abandoned cities, which meant that they had been captured by the beasts. So, in the current situation, Gil, what do you think? Wyrm looked at Gilgamesh. Not to mention Gilgamesh's combat power in the state of the Sage King, Gilgamesh was a powerful figure with the pariah sword. Now Gilgamesh was in the human state, not the servant state. Some people may think that Gilgamesh in the human state was weak, but don't forget, how could Gilgamesh, who dared to go against the gods in Kanagami, be weak? The current Gilgamesh was at least stronger than Gilgamesh in the servant state. This king's opinion is a defensive battle, Gilgamesh said. This king told the Uruk people a few days ago that the 5th Uruk dynasty will be destroyed, and humans will be destroyed in half a year, Gilgamesh said while looking out the window. This king is no longer afraid of death, and the people are very active and living. Didn't you see it? Gilgamesh was right. On the way here, Wyrm saw a prosperous scene. Prosperous. There was no despair on the people's faces, only hope for tomorrow. The 5th Uruk dynasty is destined to be weak, but the humans of the 6th dynasty will be active, so I will not take the initiative to attack. In addition, Gilgamesh had another reason. If he used all his strength to eliminate Tiamat and the other 2 pillar goddesses, the mastermind behind the burning of humanity would arrange new enemies and even new plans. Cracking the singularity too early would alert the enemy. After all, Chaldea and the others were now working on the first singularity. According to the difficulty of the singularity, the Uruk was likely to be the last singularity. If this singularity was rescued by Wuming and the others, after Chaldea cleared the sixth singularity, it was likely that new singularities or even more would appear. Wuming and Gilgamesh both understood this, so Gilgamesh chose a defensive battle, and Wuming gave up the savior title and accepted Siduri's summon. But even if he accepted Siduri's summon, Wuming's master was not Siduri, but the Holy Grail that remained in Wuming's body. After all, the fifth Uruk dynasty will eventually come to an end. This is an irresistible history. Gilgamesh said indifferently. That's also true. After all, we haven't figured out the true identity of the other two pillar goddesses. It's not wise to act rashly. Wuming also nodded. But, we can't let the Uruk fall too early. Then, Wuming stood up. Gil, you should know about the Holy Grail War, right? Wuming asked Gil. Of course, this king knows about it. I accidentally saw it with my clairvoyance. This king originally intended to summon 7 servants to help fight against the demonic beasts. Gilgamesh waved his hand and smiled a little uninterestedly. After all, it's better than nothing. There's no time to lose. Follow this king's summon in this tower. Gilgamesh didn't leave the room and directly engraved the summoning circle in the room. Don't you need my help? Even for you, summoning multiple servants as a human is not a small burden. Wuming asked. Wuming was now using the Holy Grail in his body as a medium. If possible, Gilgamesh could also let Wuming summon servants. No, this king can do it. Don't underestimate this king, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh smiled and refused Wuming's proposal. Wuming smiled helplessly. Then, holding the divine axe and the clay book, Gilgamesh stood in front of the circle and began to chant. Heroes of all ages, respond to this king's summon and seek refuge under this king. Buzz dash, the magic circle lit up. Because it was an unusual summoning ritual of the Holy Grail War, Gilgamesh didn't use a special spell. He just injected magic into the magic circle. In an instant, 7 figures appeared from the magic circle. Saber, Okita Soki, I will serve you sincerely as a samurai. Pwa, a young woman who looked like a samurai held a sheathed Japanese katana and respectfully knelt in front of Gilgamesh, and then she spat out blood. Lancer, Sparta King Leonidas, my king, use me as you wish. Oh. A muscular man with a red cloak and a golden helmet whose face could not be seen clearly and a spear in his hand began to roar angrily. Archer, Ba Guzan, at the king's service. A woman wearing a cloth armor, a long sword, a long bow, and a long sword also knelt on the ground behind Minamoto Yashitsugu. Caster Merlin, in response to the king's summon, I come here, oh, isn't this a villo? A white-clothed old man smiled at Wuming. Assassin, Fuma Kotaro, please take care of me. A young man wearing a ninja outfit and a wide scarf knelt beside Ba Guzan. Berserker, Ibaraki Dojo, is there anything delicious here? He. The ghost named Ibaraki Dojo made a strange laugh and looked at everyone with a smile. Ruler Amakusa Shiro Shurjun, I have arrived here in response to the summons. You are. So that's how it is. What an ill-fated relationship. Amakusa Shiro Shurjun saw Wuming and instantly recognized him. Writer, Uruk Hyunryong, welcome to Mesopotamia in 2600 BC. Wuming also reported his rank. Welcome to your arrival, now you are lucky to be under this king's command and witness the end of the Uruk. Gilgamesh looked at everyone with a smile. At this point, a total of 8 riders of 7 ranks, including additional ranks, descended to Uruk. Chapter 388. 8 servants descended on Uruk. Among them, Okita Soki, Leonidas, Ba Guzan, Fuma Kotaro, Ibaraki Dojo, and Shiro Amakusa. A total of 6 servants were sent to the front line by Gilgamesh. Leonidas and Ba Guzan were both generals, so they were sent to the front line to lead the troops. Okita Soki, although she was like an assassin, she could also destroy the enemy's elite units, so she was also sent to the front line. As a berserker, Ibaraki Dojo naturally went to the battlefield to kill the enemy. Fuma Kotaro was responsible for collecting information and passing it back and forth between the front line and the rear. And Shiro Amakusa was responsible for the command work. After all, Shiro Amakusa was also a sage. Whether it was Leonidas, Ba Guzan, Soki Soki, or even Fuma Kotaro, they were just generals. Although some of these generals also had some commanding ability, it was better to send a commander to command them. Furthermore, if it was Shiro Amakusa, it would be quite easy for him to lead a group of local generals. And Shiro Amakusa had another task, which was to monitor Ibaraki Dojo. Among the summoned servants, Ibaraki Dojo was the only one who was difficult to restrain. Moreover, Ibaraki Dojo was a ghost. If he was sent to the front line, it was inevitable that Ibaraki Dojo would rebel. Therefore, Shiro Amakusa's task was to monitor Ibaraki Dojo in addition to integrating the team situation. As heroes, they did not refuse. After all, saving humans was something they were happy to do. In this way, Merlin, Wuming, and Gilgamesh were left in the rear tower. Today, this king is going to deal with the accumulated government affairs. You two stay here for the time being. If you're bored, you can go shopping. With that, Gilgamesh left. Later, Merlin and Wuming were driven out of the tower and went to the street to start their shopping trip. After using a technique to reduce their presence, Merlin and Wuming leisurely strolled through the streets, watching the bustling scene around them. I didn't expect you to come as a servant. Did you have enough of Avalon and want to come out? Don't tell me you came here because you want to save humans, Wuming teased Merlin. Merlin didn't have such thoughts. As a half-human, half-nightmare existence, although he could feel the pain of humans, he couldn't understand the meaning of this pain. This was the nature of Merlin. How could that be? I'm very worried about the crisis of mankind. If mankind is destroyed, I will also be affected. Although I can't understand human feelings, I still like a happy ending. Merlin smiled slyly as he looked at his friend. Since Merlin was summoned, he had been looking at Wuming with a sly smile. Wuming even suspected that Merlin wasn't summoned by Gilgamesh, but appeared as a servant on his own initiative. You already know I'm here, but you still came as a servant. You came out of Avalon, who would believe that you're not looking for fun? Wuming said casually. Don't say that. We're old friends who haven't seen each other for many years. I came here to see you. Merlin still had a smile on his face. Since you can travel through time and space, you should go to other singularities to help mankind. When you're at the sixth singularity, remember to take care of the queen. Although she has grown, she has gradually lost her love. Although Merlin was still smiling, Wuming heard a trace of pleading in his tone. Merlin had always treated Artoria as his daughter. On the other hand, Wuming, cough cough, as the one who captured the heart of my daughter, you have to take responsibility, my friend. Merlin begged. If Artoria is here, of course, I will go back and take care of her. No matter how much she grows, she is still a little girl. Wuming said matter-of-factly. By the way, you have the clairvoyance, and you also saw the last master of Chaldea. So, what do you think of Tachika? Wuming stopped looking at Merlin's sly face and talked about other things. Tachika, ah. Although she is still a little immature, I have seen her performance in Winterwood City. As for now, she is already very good. Merlin nodded with satisfaction. But, by the way, what's the situation with the woman who was once your master? You took care of her so much. Did you abandon her and fall in love with someone else? Merlin said teasingly while looking at Wuming. Merlin looked at Wuming with a smile on his face. He wanted to keep the goodies within the family. Olga Marie is just a little girl who lacks love. As a servant, I should care about her. Wuming said casually. What was the so-called pure bond? He and Olga Marie were, well, not accepting any rebuttals. Even our king did not receive such care from you. Let me tell you in advance, the sixth singularity has our king, and it is a grown-up king. This made Wyrm a little surprised. Merlin's eyes could only see what happened in the present, but not the future or the past. In other words, the sixth singularity had something to do with the Knights of the Round Table. I always feel that you have done something bad. Wyrm looked at Merlin with some contempt. How could that be? I just gave that person a little help. Merlin continued with that sly smile. It would be strange if I believe you. Wyrm no longer looked at Merlin. Well, then, I will leave for a while. After all, the identity of the two pillar goddesses has not been investigated. Wyrm stopped and said to Merlin. Gilgamesh said before. If you have the ability, you can explore the southern part of Mesopotamia. The north has been invaded by magical beasts. Even if the three goddesses alliance, they will not act together. Then goodbye, I'm almost done shopping. I will go find King Gilgamesh first. I don't want to do the hard work of running. Merlin said lazily. Don't want to run, I think King Gilgamesh will soon give you a task. Wyrm smiled mischievously. Thank you for your kind words. Then, Merlin walked in the direction of the tower, and Wyrm also walked out of the Uruk city. Outside the city, Wyrm looked at the north. At present, there is only one kind of magical beast, and for the time being, there is no need to worry about Tiamat's attack. For some reason, Tiamat did not appear. It seemed that she was constantly producing a magical beast army. Then, I will go to the south and take a look. With that said, Wyrm's figure swayed, and then, a giant dragon soared into the sky. Chapter 389. Flapping his wings, Wyrm looked down at the land of Mesopotamia. Along the way, he even killed a few lone demonic beasts that came out of nowhere. However, Wyrm noticed a problem. Like mass-produced clones, not only did these demonic beasts look the same, they were all wild beasts similar to the red-furred lion. Through his own senses, Wyrm noticed that these demonic beasts had abnormally short lives. It was as if they were soldiers born for war, Wyrm said as he looked at the corpses of the demonic beasts. How sad. Has Tiamat fallen to this extent? Although Wyrm was not really a descendant of Tiamat, because of the connection between them in the legend, Wyrm still cared about Tiamat. After shaking his head, Wyrm no longer thought about anything else. He transformed into a giant dragon again and flew into the sky, towards the south. What a nostalgic scene, Wyrm said. Back then, he came to Mesopotamia by accident. Later on, he became the protector of the Uruk and Gilgamesh's teacher. Although there were many gods in Mesopotamia back then, these gods were quite obedient. Only a few gods like Ishtar liked to cause trouble. Now that the gods had disappeared, the demonic beasts had begun to wreak havoc in the north. Although it was not that the people had no way of making a living, it was not much better. Just like the few lone demonic beasts that Wyrm encountered earlier, only God knew where they came from to the rear of the Uruk. If a normal person encountered them, there would only be one outcome: Mesopotamia was not small. Wyrm could not protect all the people of Mesopotamia all the time. Therefore, Wyrm could only eliminate the demonic beasts that he encountered. After arriving at the southern city of Mesopotamia, Wyrm noticed something unusual. Forest? That's right. There was a forest before Wyrm. In the south of Uruk, the land that was originally flat in Wyrm's memory had now become a forest. The original southernmost city, Elidu, had been completely swallowed by the forest. Of course, it was not impossible for the environment to have changed after Wyrm left for so long. However, this was the barren land of Mesopotamia. Although the Euphrates River and the Tigris River ran through the land of Mesopotamia was still barren. Although it was possible to plant crops that could survive normally, it was rare to see a forest like this in Mesopotamia. Only the northernmost part of Mesopotamia, which was close to the border of Mesopotamia, had large fir forests. Other than that, there were no forests in Uruk or any other place. Not to mention, Wyrm could tell that the forest in the distance was not a local species. It's a bit like a tropical rainforest, Wyrm said as he flew in the sky and looked at the forest in the distance. Apart from that, the rainforest also contained an extremely strong mana. If Wyrm was not close to it, he would not have noticed it. This place is just giving away 300 taels of silver. Wyrm sneered. If Gilgamesh were here, he would definitely attach great importance to this place. Due to the high concentration of mana in the atmosphere, ordinary people in this era did not pay much attention to forests with strong mana. If an ordinary person were to approach this forest, they would instantly feel that something was wrong and would choose to escape, not to mention whether they could adapt and survive in this era. This was because this forest with a high concentration of mana was like a poisonous forest to them. The genes engraved in their bones would urge them to leave, and they would die if they continued to go deeper. However, such a forest was like swimming in water to Wyrm. It did not affect him at all. Wyrm looked down at Ur City. The people in the south were the furthest away from the front line of the magical beasts in the north, so they seemed to be the safest. Wyrm then flapped his wings and flew towards Ur City, ready to gather some information. After about 10 minutes, a figure walked out of Ur City. This person was Wyrm. Wyrm revealed his identity. The mayor of Ur City did not suspect him. In his opinion, Hyunryong's holy aura could not be faked. The mayor of Ur City immediately received Wyrm and told Wyrm the news. It appeared suddenly. Wyrm looked at the rainforest in the distance thoughtfully. According to the mayor of Ur City, this forest appeared a few days ago, and the border city in the south, Eridu, had stopped contacting Ur City. The mayor of Ur City had also sent a message to the Uruk city where Gilgamesh was and asked for help. Unfortunately, the communication technology was outdated in BC, and it seemed that their message had not reached Uruk yet. After that, Wyrm directly revealed his dragon form outside Ur City. He ignored the cries of surprise and worship of the citizens of Ur City behind him and flew straight towards the rainforest. When he flew above the rainforest, the mana that hit him was like the hot air that hit him when he walked out of an air-conditioned room. Wyrm frowned. There's a trace of divinity in the mana. It seems that this place is the residence of a certain goddess. Divinity was a mysterious thing. It could be said that people without divinity could not sense it through their physical bodies. They could only rely on instruments. There's a city called Eridu to the south of Ur City. It's very likely that the goddess has directly occupied Eridu and treated it as her own territory. Wyrm analyzed. He did not know which goddess this was, and he did not know if the citizens of Eridu were still alive. However, he could confirm that the goddess of this rainforest was not a local goddess. The gods of Mesopotamia would not have anything to do with rainforests. When it came to rainforests, the easiest place to think of would be Latin America. Could it be a god from the Mayan divine system or the Aztec divine system? Wyrm pondered. With that thought, Wyrm decided to just barge in and take a look. With his strength as a rider, even if he could not defeat the other party, he could still escape. At this moment, creatures flew out from the rainforest one after another. When he took a closer look, he realized that they were ancient pterosaurs. Ancient pterosaurs? Seems like I've been underestimated. Wyrm said helplessly. Roar! Countless ancient pterosaurs roared angrily and rushed toward Wyrm, who was many times larger than them. These pterosaurs had sharp mouths and sharp claws that shone with a cold light. They looked extremely dangerous. However, to Wyrm, who had grade A durability, they were no threat at all. Clang, clang, clang. The group of pterosaurs collided with Wyrm, producing countless sounds of metal colliding. They're not afraid of me. It seems that these are all controlled by that goddess. To Wyrm, who could influence and control fantasy breeds, these pterosaurs had ignored his suppression and attacked him. There was no doubt that they were controlled by someone. Roar! In an instant, Wyrm roared angrily and released his dragon power, directly killing this group of pterosaurs. Then, Wyrm looked at a certain spot in the forest and flew over. Chapter 390. Wyrm landed, and what he saw was a city surrounded by countless vines and trees. There was no one in the city, but there were traces of human life in the surroundings. It seemed like it had been there for the past few days. Sure enough, Eric Metropolis has become the territory of that goddess. Wyrm said as expected. Because his dragon form was somewhat restricted in Eric Metropolis, Wyrm removed his noble phantasm and turned into his human form. Then, Wyrm looked at the vines that were in the way and thought of something. Come out, Funbaba. Wyrm waved his hand, and a white spear jumped out of Wyrm's sleeve and merged into the ground. Woo! Following a whimpering sound, a green creature that looked like a bear or a deer with two horns on its head emerged from the ground. Just like climbing up from the water to land, Funbaba's appearance did not have any effect on the ground. Woo woo woo! After coming out, Funbaba rubbed against Wyrm like a spoiled child, and softly whimpered. Although Wyrm's dragon form was much bigger than Funbaba, with Wyrm's current human form, Funbaba would swallow Wyrm in one bite. Moreover, with Funbaba's love for Wyrm, if he was not careful, Funbaba might really swallow Wyrm in one bite. Sorry, I haven't seen you in a long time. It's my fault, forgive me. Wyrm touched Funbaba lovingly and said with a bitter smile. Business is more important, I'll make it up to you in the future. Wyrm touched Funbaba's head again and became serious. Woo woo, Funbaba reluctantly called out, but it didn't bother Wyrm anymore. Funbaba gently lifted its leg, and an invisible force spread out. The vines and trees that were in the way moved away as if they had grown legs. Funbaba was the mythical beast of the forest. Something of this level was still possible. Let's go, Funbaba. Wyrm jumped onto Funbaba's huge head. Funbaba whimpered and began to move towards the inner part of Eldo. After entering Eidolon, Wyrm noticed that there were not many trees or vines on the streets. Do they not want these people to go out, or are they simply guarding against my arrival? Wyrm was more inclined to the former. After all, the obstacles could not stop Wyrm from moving forward. However, Wyrm felt that the other party's goal was the latter. After all, there were traces of human activity at the entrance of Eldo. At this time, people started to poke their heads out of the houses in Eldo. The people of Eldo are all fine? Wyrm was surprised. However, this also explained why there were traces of human activity at the entrance of Eldo. This is Master Hyunryong. It's Master Hyunryong and the mythical beast Funbaba. Master Hyunryong, are you here to save us? Master Hyunryong, in an instant, countless people of Eldo who saw Wyrm and Funbaba ran out and knelt before Wyrm, begging for Wyrm to save them. However, most of these people were women and children. Only a small portion of them were men. Could it be that they were sacrificed? Wyrm thought. Everyone, please calm down. Then, Wyrm opened his mouth. His voice was filled with light as it entered everyone's ears. In an instant, everyone calmed down. Wyrm directly used his holy aura to calm the people's unstable emotions. Master Hyunryong, you are right, Master Hyunryong, you must save us. Everyone calmed down. Although they were still begging for Wyrm to save them, their tone was very calm. So, what happened here? Wyrm jumped down from the Funbaba and asked. After a while, everyone told Wyrm everything that happened. King Gilgamesh had returned and ruled Uruk as a wise king. Their vassal cities were able to benefit from this and develop well. Not long after, news of a magical beast invasion came from the north. King Gilgamesh organized an army to fight against the magical beasts. Since they were in the southernmost region, they didn't have to worry about being attacked by demonic beasts. Although they would occasionally encounter one or two demonic beasts that came to the south, the people of Eidolon were still able to subdue and kill them. However, at some point in time, the whole of Eldo was surrounded by forests overnight. Vines and trees also appeared in Eldo. After that, a woman who claimed to be a goddess came. She said that she was the feathered serpent god. After the people of Eldo witnessed the power of the feathered serpent god, she announced that this place had become her territory. However, to Wu Ming's surprise, the feathered serpent god did not do anything evil after ruling Eldo. The people of Eldo continued to live their lives. However, good things did not last long. Magical beasts would attack from time to time. Although the people of Eldo were able to subdue and kill them, there were still casualties. Moreover, the number of magical beasts had increased over the past few days. Therefore, the feathered serpent god made a deal with the people. I can protect you from the magical beasts, but you must send a man to my temple every day. In order to survive, after weighing the pros and cons, the people agreed to the feathered serpent god's request. In the following days, the people would choose a man and send him to the feathered serpent god's temple in Eldo. Eldo was not attacked by magical beasts again. However, the people found that none of the men who were sent to the temple returned. No one knew if they were dead or alive. Gradually, the people of Eldo became afraid. However, because of the magical beasts outside, they did not dare to break the contract until Wu Ming arrived. I understand. Everyone, go back to your houses. I will talk to the feathered serpent god. Don't worry. Using his holy aura again, Wu Ming persuaded the people to go back to their houses. Otherwise, as Wu Ming expected, the men would have been used as sacrifices. However, if it was really the feathered serpent god, the sacrifice would be a joke. The feathered serpent god hated living sacrifices. Therefore, either the feathered serpent god was not the feathered serpent god, or there was something else going on. Let's go, Fan Baba. Let's go take a look at the temple in Eldo. Wu Ming jumped on Fan Baba's head and patted Fan Baba's head. Woo woo, accompanied by the sound of Fan Baba's footsteps and cries, the huge green beast headed towards the temple built by the feathered serpent god. Chapter 391. Because Fan Baba was not small, Fan Baba quickly brought Wu Ming to the temple located at the edge of Edo. The Mayan pyramidal building towered in front of Wu Ming, surrounded by a mysterious and lush forest. Fortunately, the temple and the forest were located at the edge of Edo. If the temple and the forest were placed in the center of Edo, the entire city would have become a forest. Fan Baba stopped and did not move forward. Woo-woo, Fan Baba stopped in front of the forest. After trying for a moment, it shook its head and let out a whimper. This time, it was really whimpering. Fortunately, Wu Ming quickly stabilized himself when Fan Baba shook its head. Otherwise, he would have fallen. Fan Baba also knew that it had made a mistake. Coupled with the fact that it could no longer control the trees, Fan Baba's whimpers became even deeper. Okay, just be careful next time. Wu Ming patted Fan Baba's head. After stabilizing himself, Wu Ming looked at the pyramid-shaped temple and the surrounding forest. As expected, these trees are no longer under your control. Wu Ming also guessed that there would be times when Fan Baba would not be able to control them. The feathered god was known as the god of agriculture. It was easy for her to hasten the growth of plants. Regardless of whether or not the other party was the real feathered god, at the very least, she had the ability to hasten the growth of the forest overnight. From the location of the other party's temple, the forest must be under her control. It was reasonable that Fan Baba could not control it. After all, Fan Baba was a mythical creature of the forest, and the feathered god was a god-level existence in Aztec mythology. Wu Ming jumped off Fan Baba's head and said to Fan Baba, "In that case, wait for me here. If this is the real feathered god, I believe that as a good god, she will not choose to fight with me." After all, the feathered serpent god was a kind deity. As someone who loved humans as much as Wu Ming, the two of them should not attack. However, he couldn't rule out the possibility that the other party wasn't the feathered serpent god, or that even if the other party was the feathered serpent god, the feathered serpent god wouldn't hesitate to attack. Wu Ming was also confused about this. The Quetzalcoatl seemed to be on the opposite side of the people of Mesopotamia. Therefore, Wu Ming wanted to talk to her after learning that the goddess here called herself the Quetzalcoatl. Wuming wanted to figure out what exactly the three goddesses' alliance was and what their respective objectives were. Woo-woo, Funbaba responded and nodded. Then, can the leopard over there come out? You've been following us all the way. Wuming said casually to a certain spot in the forest. Rustle rustle. As soon as Wuming finished speaking, the forest in the place he was looking at shook, and the leaves rustled. It was just that this voice gave people a feeling of being startled. Wah, what? You actually found the super hidden leopard man. Damn it, looks like he's a strong opponent. With a swoosh, a guy wearing a yellow-spotted leopard suit scurried out. Then, he looked at Wuming as if he was facing a formidable enemy. This made Wuming feel a little helpless. In fact, Wuming had felt that someone was watching him ever since he came to Elida, but until now, Wuming had not found out where the person who was watching him was. After that, Wuming just wanted to trick the person who was watching him, but he did not expect that it would actually work. Are you still a god? Wuming looked at the guy who called himself the Leopard Man with some surprise. Wuming could feel divinity from this guy who called himself the Leopard Man, which meant that this guy was a goddess. However, this guy seemed like a joke no matter how he looked at it. A goddess wearing a leopard coat, please forgive Wuming for not knowing what a goddess likes. Wahahaha, I didn't expect you to have such a good eye. That's right, this goddess is the Leopard Man. Wahahaha, the Leopard Man who thought that Wuming was scared by his identity laughed proudly, but this way, he was even more inconsistent with the word goddess. After thinking about Ishtar, and looking at the leopard in front of him who was laughing shamelessly, Wuming helplessly covered his face. Woo-woo. Even Funbaba could not accept it. How could a goddess be such an existence? Funbaba, she's yours. Wuming did not even look at her, and directly pointed at the Leopard Man who was still laughing. Woo-woo. Funbaba replied, then lightly stomped his feet, and several vines rose from under the Leopard Man's feet. What? The Leopard Man was shocked, and quickly jumped out of the vine-catching area. It had to be said that although as a goddess, the Leopard Man was not qualified at all, as a warrior, the Leopard Man was undoubtedly qualified. In terms of monitoring prey in the dense forest, the Leopard Man was also an impeccable hunter. Although the density of magic in the dense forest was too high, and the detection of magic was affected, even with Wuming's vigilance, he still did not find the Leopard Man's position, which was enough to show how powerful the Leopard Man was. And the reason why Wuming gave such a powerful Leopard Man to Funbaba to deal with was because Funbaba was also not a weak existence. According to the legends, Gilgamesh and Enkidu worked together to defeat the divine beast of the forest, Funbaba, and obtained countless treasures. From this point of view, Funbaba seemed to be very weak. But don't forget, if Gilgamesh and Enkidu worked together to defeat it, how could it be weak? The answer was naturally no. Funbaba had been using this stance, but in fact, Funbaba also had other stances, but because of Wuming, Funbaba did not use any other stances. Even Gilgamesh and Enkidu would find it difficult to deal with it. Seeing that the attack did not hit, Funbaba quickly released another attack, and several vines once again appeared under the Leopard Man's feet. This time, the vines were controlled by Funbaba at an extremely tricky angle, and ordinary people would not be able to dodge them. You're really fast, but you're still not as fast as me. The Leopard Man unexpectedly dodged the attack again, and this time, the Leopard Man's expression became serious. Woo-woo. Funbaba was not to be outdone and cried out. Wuming looked at the Leopard Man in surprise, but because of his trust in Funbaba, Wuming directly entered the forest. Try to capture Funbaba alive. Wuming instructed. Woo-woo-woo-woo-woo, Funbaba replied, and at the same time, said a few words to the Leopard Man. What? You actually dare to say, take me down in 5 rounds, then I'll let you see how powerful I, Leopard Man, am. Wuming did not expect the Leopard Man to be able to converse with Funbaba, and he felt a little helpless. I always feel that this Leopard Man is actually a funny character, Wuming said as he walked through the forest. And just as Wuming walked through the forest, he was greeted by a big sister's hug. Let's wrestle. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.